Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Alamosa, Colorado. It's great to have everyone here today. What a beautiful setting, and thanks to Adams State for hosting us. We'll get a welcome here in a moment, but before we do that, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Who's the closest commissioner to here? Of course, duh. Commissioner Phillips, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Laura. Would you please call the roll?
Adams. Present. Bailey.
Here.
Lecca. Here. Haskett. Here. May. Present. Otero. Present. Phillips. Here. Reading. Here. Hutchton. Here. Vardy. Present. Chair Hauser.
Here. Okay, thank you again. Welcome. This is day one, June 22nd, 2023 of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting. We are meeting today at Adams State University in Alamosa. I want to first thank Commissioner Phillips and the team at the Zapata Ranch for hosting us last night. Absolutely spectacular property, Nature Conservancy partnership. So it was a really treat to see that for those of us who were able to get here a little early. I also just want to take a point of personal privilege and welcome former Commissioner Dale Peisel, who's in the room, and I think is going to stick around today, who hails from Creede, Colorado. So for those, I think there's only two of us that served with Dale, Commissioner Haskett and myself. So thank you for coming and enduring a day. We'll promise you a hamburger or something tonight. I do want to invite Margaret Dole to come up and welcome us to Adams State University. President David Tanberg is out of town on a well-deserved vacation, so Margaret has agreed to welcome us. So welcome, Margaret.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Adams State. I am the acting vice president for academic affairs, and so Dr. Tanberg asked me to welcome you while he's enjoying the Canadian Rockies. And I'm a little bit envious of that, as I'm a Canadian originally, and the Rockies are important to me personally. But for today, welcome to all of you. Welcome to Adams State. Who's been on the campus before? A few of you. Any alums in the room? All right, that's what I like to see. I hope that your great story began here and is continuing. Welcome also to the San Luis Valley. Adams State is an integral part of the Adams State Valley community, and I can think of no better place for this group to meet. What we see in the Valley, what we do at the university really does connect with your mission. The San Luis Valley is a place which perpetuates and promotes wildlife everywhere that we go, including in Alamosa. If you've been fortunate to see, there are deer all over town. So we promote that everywhere. Certainly our campus community also definitely enjoys the outdoor recreation opportunities in the Valley and beyond, and it's a big part of our programming on campus. We have a very well-established adventure program. In fact, it is the oldest adventure program in the state. And they make advantage of all that we have around us. And perhaps most importantly, you have an educational mission which also aligns with ours. Adams State is in its 102nd year. It depends how you count it. 102 years since we were formed in the legislature. 101 years since we broke ground on our building, and more like 102, 103 years since we admitted students and started classes. We've educated thousands of students over those years, including many in wildlife biology. That is probably our major that most closely aligns to careers in parks and wildlife. And many of those students go on to work for state and federal agencies. So I hope that you enjoy your time at Adams State. We have a beautiful campus. I hope you can see a glimpse of it and aren't entirely cooped up in this room. You have what looks like a kind of arduous agenda. So I wish you all the best. I hope you enjoy your day, enjoy your visit, and I will see some of you this evening at the dinner.
Thank you so much for that welcome. This is an important institution in the Valley, and we're just grateful to be able to meet here and to be part of this community. So we are on item number 2, approval of the minutes from the May 3rd and 4th commission meeting, and I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes as drafted.
Moved by Commissioner Touchton. Is there a second? Commissioner Phillips. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Any on item number 3, corrections to the agenda for consent? I've actually pulled item number 19.1, which is the paragliding item that we got some public comment on, and I think we have public commenters that would like to engage on that topic. So if there are others that you would like to change, I will entertain those now. And we'll look for support on that particular change to the consent item just by kind of nods around the room. Okay. Any other changes to the consent agenda? I don't know that we need approval of that. Jake, do we need approval of that? Okay, so we'll pull that consent item off and address that tomorrow during that time slot. Okay, great. So we will move straight to number 4, which is commissioner comments and questions. What have you been doing and what have you been up to since we were together in May? I'll just turn it out to the group. Commissioner Blecka.
I'll share, and I actually brought some pictures with me. A couple things I just wanted to highlight. There's a great article in the Colorado Outdoor magazine about the Ray Fish Hatchery and Warren Fish Hatchery. So that was a great article. And just to dovetail on that, there was a sport fishing clinic through 4-H last week that I was deputized to go to. It was unintentional. But I'll say it was a great experience. This is a picture of the fishing trailer, which I've never seen before. However, in another life, as an HPP administrator or coordinator, I worked with Pepper Canterbury and putting one of those together, but I had never seen one. So it was great. As a parent, it's fantastic. It relieves a lot of mutiny and anarchy with regards to equipment. So it's great. So thank you. And then there's some other pictures. That's my daughter with Officer Melby, being a good guy, helping her out. Staff was fantastic. This is a picture of my plug for a junior commissioner program. As you can tell, we already have 2 recruits. One of them, I'll say, in the pink, looks like she's already gone through some public comment. She's got the look, so she thinks she's a natural, but that was my plug. And that's her little buddy, and it was too funny not to put up there, so thank you. But also just want to thank the guys at the hatchery, Trevor and Travis and Matt and Caden and Jolyn for putting the project together. Jolynn's our 4-H person. And then one more plug for our fishing program. Oh, it keeps going because we actually go into the hatchery. There was a filleting program, like we caught the fish, and then everybody got to keep it or take it home, whatever, they filleted it, and then we did a tour of the hatchery, which was pretty cool. Since it's a warm water one, there's a lot of tubs, like I call them hot tubs, I don't know, versus like the big long concrete things. And so we had a great turnout. So thank you for that. And just real quick, the next day we had a 4-H baking project. And this is to stay with me because this is really tells you how important the fishing program is in the state. It was cake wars. You know, there's a topic and you have to come up with a plan and whatever. And so you're talking like, 6 and 7-year-olds, maybe some 14-year-old girls. But the subject was outdoor summer fun. And of the 12 cakes that were there, 7 of them demonstrated fishing as their outdoor summer fun. And so I thought that was incredible considering we don't have a lot of options in Yuma County to go fishing. You literally, unless you go to Stalker, you have to leave our community. And so for have that to be ingrained, so just naturally, I thought was really cool. There was a lot of goldfish crackers and icing. It was crazy. So thank you, and thanks to everybody for this great day. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Haskett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a PowerPoint also. Springtime in the Northwest has been busy, and I've been really busy actually traveling all over. I'm happy to say that conditions are getting better every day. Just a minute here. I wanted to show you this
Maria, a little
picture.
closer to the mic, just so that,
Oh.
yeah, great.
Sorry. I wanted to show you this picture because if you look at the top, that's the flat tops. We still have a lot of snow. There's actually 4 or 5 foot drifts still on the top. It's hard to believe and you're on this side of the divide, but we still have a lot of snow. But it's melting, it's turning green. It is raining a lot instead of snowing, but at least it's improving. The next picture is one of my favorite events of the year, Cast Blast in Twang. We had a wonderful turnout, about 70 people. They learned to shoot a 22, and this is at the 22 range. And then we have an archery range set up. They learn how to shoot a bow. Go ahead. Have cute little targets for them and really colorful bows for them to shoot. And then we have fishing, which is probably the highlight for all of these kids that go. And you can see the boy on the bottom caught a fish, and he carried that poor fish around for 2 hours, I think, at least. But they fish a lot, and we do serve food. We had hamburgers and hot dogs, and we had staff from all over the place, and that's actually Director Davis there meeting our local staff. We were really lucky to have him come and join us, and I got to take him on a tour of the Northwest also afterwards. We got to witness the Mormon cricket migration, if none of you have seen that, but all those little dots are the Mormon cricket, and all the way up the road, if you look, and the highways are just covered with them. It's eerie, if you ask me, to watch the whole ground move underneath you. We visited, that was actually at the Bitterbrush State Wildlife Area, and then we visited Habitat Project, and these are Z dikes, which Commissioner Touchton's familiar with, and these are actually 2 years ago, I think they put these in, and they're doing their job. The grass is moving out. Great project, and he got to view a lot of the landscape. Actually, the next day I left for GOCO in Crested Butte, and that's Blue Mesa, and then that's the view in Crested Butte. Commissioner Touchton and I went on a morning hike there on the left. We went up the Snodgrass Trail. And then on the right, we visited the Trampy Ranch that afternoon. Stacy McPhail from the Gunnison Ranchland Conservation Legacy gave us a great talk. She's really good. I think she does a lot. It's amazing to hear all the things that they have done in the Gunnison Valley. And this week, I think, actually, I went to Colorado Cattlemen's Association where they had their annual convention. And I want to congratulate Mike Nottingham and his family from Moffett County for receiving the Landowner of the Year award. Mike is also part of the Ranching for Wildlife program that works collaboratively with CPW. Yesterday, I attended the RFW annual meeting, the Ranching for Wildlife, and I didn't mention this before when we were talking about winter conditions in May, and I want to mention it now. When our winter conditions turned critical, the Ranching for Wildlife folks stepped up and helped with the feeding of wildlife. A lot of those people in the Northwest that were Ranching for Wildlife fed or helped do our baiting operations every day. And they also took their own cuts before license allocations were done, and before we even started seeing license numbers, they took cuts. In addition, when the commission cut licenses for season dates for elk, Ranching for Wildlife took further cuts for deer, elk, and antelope, and they also reduced their number of hunting days when we shortened the length of the second and third rifle seasons. And I want to thank, a big thank you to all the staff and volunteers who help make all of these events and projects possible.
Thanks, Commissioner Haskett. I just want to do a quick sound check. We got a lot of fans and air and street sweepers going by. Can everybody hear okay in the back? Okay. So I'm just going to remind everybody to speak straight into the mic. Is that better? I mean, can people hear that? Okay. So just speak straight into the mic. If you don't need your fan, temporarily at your tables, we'll turn this one off. And to our OIT team, are you okay? I mean, is the quality all right for our public? Okay. All right, thanks for that little adjustment. Other questions, comments, Commissioner Reading?
Thank you. As many of you know, I work for Butterfly Pavilion, and I'd like to take this opportunity to invite all the commissioners to visit. We did have Commissioner Greenberg come to the Butterfly Pavilion, and you can see she had a great time. So you can emulate her and hold some of the amazing critters we have there if you come and visit, and understand that those invertebrates are important as well, and learn about why and the things we're doing. I've been traveling a lot, and one of the first places I went after the last meeting was to a state park in Ohio, and I was surprised by the huge diversity of birds at McGee State Park. It's a McGee Marsh State Park. And the wood warblers were spectacular. There were other birds as well. On the next slide. And I was astounded. I was blown away. I didn't realize Ohio, pardon me for those of you who might be from Ohio, would have such a diversity of wildlife. But the birding was tremendous, and I really enjoyed it. Lest we forget, right here in the West, we have a lot of great landscapes too. I went up to Wyoming to a ranch in the Black Hills. It's a cattle ranch that does a great job of doing wildlife conservation as well. And so, again, it was during migration, so I saw a lot of great birds. So I recommend you to get out during May and in the fall, in September and October, to see the bird life. On the way up there, I saw, every time I drive through Wyoming, I'm amazed at the number of pronghorn in the eastern part of the state. And we're going to talk about pronghorn at this meeting tomorrow, so that's a segue to that. And then finally, I was in Saudi Arabia, unless you think I just care about birds, working on restoration of wildlife there. They're very much interested in restoring the wildlife to the country. And you can see here some of the wildlife that's been restored. And all this is in preview to, in a few years, they want to put carnivores back on the landscape as well. So we have ibex, we have mountain gazelle, we have reem gazelle, we have Arabian oryx, and we have redneck ostrich, which are really endangered, all being restored. So a testament to the perseverance of wildlife in a very harsh environment, but a privilege of mine to be there. I also got to check out a reef. So doing some coral reef restoration as well, but the reef actually looks pretty good in the part we got to see. And just saying that I've been busy, but it's always good to come back home and kind of, if you have questions, catch me at the break and I'll tell you all about the projects we're doing. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Got some airline miles going there. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Hauser. Just real quick, the spring's been incredible. Moisture year. I know Dallas and Betsy and I on the eastern side. Sorry, I'm really good at the microphone. And also last night there was a bit of destructive weather around our area. Some maybe tornadoes, some hay barns blown down. Some just keeping those people, in our mind and. Yeah, shout out to them for anyone who's gotten hail or wind or severe rain damage. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, the photos out of Red Rocks and south of Denver and Eastern Plains too have been pretty amazing if you haven't seen those yet. Other comments? Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Bailey, who wants to Rochambeau?
Yeah, I'll be quick.
Okay. Commissioner Bailey.
Yeah, I don't have any images, but I just wanted to note one thing that I did since we last met was participate in Colorado State University's Pathways Conference for Human Dimensions of Wildlife, and it's a really great opportunity for folks to come from all over to talk about the ways in which they're considering, applying, researching, better understanding the human dimensions of wildlife and natural resource conservation. And I had the opportunity to speak in one of the opening plenary sessions on diverse perspectives around wildlife conservation and human dimensions, and that was quite an honor. And I also wanted to just note that lots of CPW representation at the conference, including director, deputy director, and many others. So appreciate seeing friendly faces there.
And as Commissioner Reading's not the only Globetrotter, where are you heading next week? I think it's next week.
Yeah, next week I'll be in Panama for a Sustainability Research and Innovation Conference. So I'll be sure to bring back some pictures.
Great. Commissioner Adams.
All right. So I am very excited to share my last commissioner update. I want to take a moment of appreciation for all of the commissioner updates. I mean, we have come a long way since, pictures of Charlie's dog. So thank you so much for making this meaningful. Thank you so much for allowing the public an opportunity beyond when we're talking during our meetings to really see what it's like, know that we're out in the field, in addition to our full-time jobs, our families, and our friends. So thank you so much for the shares, and I'm excited to be able to tune in the future. I also want to thank those who were able to attend on the commission, at the commission for the Cattlemen's Association. I've been going to that conference and I wasn't able to go to this year, unfortunately, and conflicted with Juneteenth, and I had other responsibilities. So I'm hopeful in the future that we can work around those dates. There are Black ranchers in Colorado, and I would love for them to be able to attend. But I always enjoyed those conferences, and as an outdoor recreationalist, that relationship is absolutely critical. So I do encourage fellow commissioners, regardless of the seat that you are in, the relationship is really strong, and having that downtime, the family dinners and all of that really helps to heal relationships and strengthen existing ones. I also want to lift up the Cast and Blast. I really enjoyed that last year, or a couple of years ago, when I was able to go in Craig, and I'm really excited about the opportunity now that we have the clay something in the Front Range, to be able to perhaps replicate something like that. Vibe Tribe Adventures is actually hosting a beach day at Aurora Reservoir this Saturday, which brings together BIPOC-led outdoor organizations. And wouldn't it be wonderful to partner next year, since it's right there, to be able to have diverse and dynamic engagement. But I will go ahead and move on to where I was. The Natural Areas Council, as you know, I serve on that as a part of my service to the commission. We are excited about the field season, which is underway. We have over 30 natural area sites this season that will be monitored with a deep collaboration with our volunteers and partners. One of our strategic goals was around strengthening the pipeline and succession planning around our volunteers. Many of our volunteers have been serving for 10, 20, 30 years, and so we really need to think deeply about how we both hold on to that institutional knowledge and supplement those incredible and critical volunteer opportunities. We are in the final stages of a new natural areas designation for Coal Creek Tall Grass Prairie. Is the new natural areas designation, and that is actually in Boulder, in the city of Boulder, and Boulder County, and very excited to. Sadly, we were hoping to have that ready for us today, but as you know, there were some other things that we were focusing on this year. And so I'm hopeful that that can be moved forward. We also have outgoing, I want to thank my fellow outgoing member, Denise Culver, who has served on the Natural Areas Council. She's a biologist and really brought a lot of skills, expertise, and experience that was desperately needed to to support this program. I look forward to following and continuing to collaborate and hopefully see this program expand. I also had the pleasure of participating in the Adaptive Community Day at Staunton State Park. I want to thank Kristen Waltz, Zach Taylor at CPW, Robert Liu, who is a track chair volunteer, and Vijay Viswanathan, who is at the City of Boulder for an incredible learning experience and relationship experience. It was wonderful to see the expansion of our track chair program. It was awesome to go there. So I went a couple of years ago to the track chair program, and just as by myself, just to see this thing that this Friends of Staunton State Park was doing, and in the 4 years to see this program expand, to have a program manager is absolutely incredible. And so how do we build on the strengths? We have incredible relationships with Wilderness on the Wheels Foundation, and of course the City of Boulder and many others. There are hand bikes. There's a lot of, the track chairs is a great entry point, but there's a lot of other ways that we can be responsive to our adaptive community, and I think Fisher's Peak is one of the leaders in that. I did also see an opportunity to close a gap. Apparently our reservation system is manual. And as I mentioned, we have one staff on that team who is the track chair manager. And so when she is out in the field, she cannot enter those. So when requests come in, our system doesn't update fast enough. So it will cause another wait list. So there's the administrative burden around that manual entry is something that needs to be addressed urgently. But other than that, continuing to build that program. And then on this note, I wanted to lift up the governor's first wildly important goals when he first came in, and one of them was telling a fuller Colorado story. And we have an opportunity awaiting with our Staunton State Park Visitor Center, which still needs to add the indigenous history already available in the state park management plan to the Visitor Center display. This is something that was raised at the opening of the Visitor Center a couple of years ago. Obviously, COVID was a challenge, but I can't go there again and flip through the history and only see settler history. I cannot only see the history of the Staunton State Park, especially when we know that history of others that have been there, especially the indigenous stewards. So please, please, please honor my tenure in this commission by adding full history to our state parks, please. Thank you so much. I only have a couple more to go. I also got to celebrate Juneteenth. As you know, it honors the informed decision by slaveholders, business leaders, politicians, and the police to withhold the knowledge of the Emancipation Proclamation to free enslaved Africans only in the Southern holding states. So again, Kentucky, others, they were enslaved. This is not in, everybody still was not free with the Emancipation Proclamation. This is also a time to grieve and mourn in the African American community, mourning the farmers, scientists, naturalists, teachers, mothers, daughters, fathers, sons, all those who have skills, knowledge, and expertise that were needed for the foundation of this country's economy for centuries. This is also a time to reflect, revisit, and refine policies, procedures, and protocols to acknowledge these truths and our collective responsibility to do better. I did not see CPW at the Juneteenth Musical Festival. I didn't see us at the Longmont Boulder County Festival, and I didn't see us at the flag raising. I wasn't everywhere, but I'm praying that we were somewhere. And so I donate this book to CPW about Juneteenth, and I look forward to joining wherever you are next year. I was, however, honored to see CPW at Boulder Pride this year. It was incredible. Thank you so much for showing up. I wasn't expecting to see y'all there. I really wasn't. Remember, one of my first questions when I came here was, do we refer to sportsmen to refer to all people? And was told, yes, Commissioner Adams, that is what we do. To know that we are capable of change. To see that not only are we there, but we actually have programming around it, where we have lavender hikes, where members of the LGBTQAI+ community and their friends and family are welcome to explore queer ecology, something I brought up a couple of years ago. So again, let's continue to deepen our commitment to healthy, kind, safe environments for LGBTQ peoples on staff, in leadership, as well as our visitors and our volunteers and our partners. This was so incredible. Thank you so much. Also, and I know it wasn't called the Animal Lab, I got in at 1:30 last night in the morning and did this at 6 o'clock this morning. So here we are, a visit to the city, to CPW's Animal Lab. I think it's like the Animal Health Lab or something else. It's outside of Fort Collins. And I just want to thank Mary Wood for putting together an absolutely exceptional visit. Thank you for Director Jeff Davis and Katie Lanter, who bum rushed my tour. But made it so much more vivid, so much more exciting. Thank you to the staff, Marcy and Dan and Karen. Their insights and information were absolutely fantastic. To learn about the diagnostic services, the vaccine bait manufacturing, the emergency feeding, winter feeding. So again, it was just a nice compliment to see Commissioner over there. Thank you, Commissioner Haskett, who shared about the feeding that happened this winter, and then to be able to go to the facility where that was actually happening. Apparently, our lease on that facility is going to be up, so the team is already working on how we can continue to serve our community, be in strong partnership with CSU and our other partners. And I leave you with one of the biggest takeaways from this journey, which was prairie dogs are the chicken nuggets of the prairie. I live in Boulder County, as you know, and to go somewhere where prairie dogs are valued and to be able to learn more about the role that they play and the fact that they have been displaced in the Front Range, and so that's why they are abundant. But to know that they do play a critical role was really inspiring and an incredible reminder that what we call invasive, what we call as humans is not always, it can be a result of the things that we've done. And so we have a responsibility to the wildlife, waterways, and all we work with. Lastly, the places you'll go. It has been an honor to serve you these last 4 years and 3 months. Though I am not applying for another term, I am planning a run for Boulder City Council. Regardless where I land, know that I'm always available via text, email, or phone. Thank you to Governor Polis for being courageous in appointing me as the first Black woman to serve on this commission. Thank you for everybody who helped me when there were barriers and gatekeepers and double speakers and those who sought to destroy ideas of inclusion and diversity and equity for all. Thank you. I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't have been able to complete this term without you. And it's from all the way from Governor Polis to everyone, almost everyone in this room. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. We will have an opportunity to celebrate you tomorrow. And always appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you come to every meeting and share with us what you have done since we were last together. Other comments, questions? Commissioner comments, questions? Me and my blind spots. Okay, I actually have a few, and this is in part in honor of Commissioner Adams, and I am not worthy of the technology and the photographs, but I'm going to try my best. So I think our team will do this. First of all, before I do that, I was remiss in not thanking and appreciating the team here in this region for pulling us together, Corey and his entire team. Obviously, Laura always gets us to this place, our OIT team, our service team here at the college. Katie has been incredible in her interim acting capacity for agenda setting and everything that she's been doing. So I just, again, always want to thank the team that gets us here. There's lots of activity behind the scenes. So I said last night in somewhat jest to someone that I was going to avoid a certain four-letter word for the next 2 days. And instead I'm replacing it with fish and park. So the first photo I have, which I love the fact that former Commissioner Peisel is in the room because he's in it. So this was in 2018, and Commissioner Haskett's there as well. And this was a visit to Lone Dome State Wildlife Area, and this is just below McPhee Reservoir, and that is the Dolores River. And if you've been following the Dolores, and just given our high snowpack this year, the Dolores has actually been runnable for those of us who are boaters, and it is an incredibly special place. And we are, to Commissioner Adams' comments on prairie dogs and others, we're killing this river. And it was incredible to see it alive. And I just thought I'd give you some sense of kind of what this is in the far south west corner of the state. So that's kind of just below the dam. Again, this was a couple of years ago. Next slide. So that's McPhee on the left, and on the right is how the Dolores normally runs. This is less than 10 cubic feet per second of water in that river. And that's because McPhee, right, wrong, or otherwise, and certainly credit to our agricultural community, the allocations simply don't allow for flow through the river in order to accommodate agriculture. This is also a big uranium mining area. You will recall we were in Gateway. This is just south of Gateway. And the Dolores kind of ran past us in Gateway as well. But that's normally more often unless there is a huge snowpack year and the reservoir is literally full. There just aren't the releases that would be sort of healthy fish habitat. Next slide. So we ran this on Memorial Day weekend, along with a lot of other folks, because there was an absolute mecca to the Dolores because it's runnable. It doesn't happen very often. This was running at 2,400 cubic feet per second. A week prior, it was running at 5,000 cubic feet per second at dangerous levels. In fact, there was a death, a drowning on the river just a week prior. So just to give you a sense of what a healthy river looks like, that's normally what this corridor would look like. This is very important to our indigenous communities. There is rock art. There are beautiful artifacts in this area. And in some ways, the fact that it's not accessible a lot of the time might in that way be perhaps positive. And there is a movement to designate this as a national monument. It is a study area, part of it. This part of the river is called Ponderosa Canyon. And then you go into the Dolores Canyons. Next slide. I think this will run, Deanna, just to give you a bit of a sense of what it was running. I mean, this was ripping fast, and we did 50 miles and probably could have done it in a day. We did it in 2 nights, but that's essentially how it was running. Next slide. You have to have a little cute dog photo. That's in tribute to Commissioner Garcia. But lots of boats, a lot of users. The put in and the takeout were chaos. And because they had brought the water down for a quote reasonable level for Memorial Day holiday weekend, just for safety reasons, it just was packed. I mean, there weren't campsites. We shared with a gentleman one night, and you just sort of made it work. And it was really special as well. Next slide. And I ran into Gail, who is out of Pagosa. She is a river safety officer, is that right? I'm looking at Heather. And she was boating with a BLM seasonal ranger who's not in this photograph. And we were stopped at a really special rock art site of a shaman. And it was good that they were actually parked there. It was hard to actually park and get your boat in anywhere because the water was running so fast. It was so great that they were there because they actually helped us kind of pull our boats in. So it was nice to meet Gail and visit with her a little bit. Next slide. And then, as Corey and the team knows down there, the week after we were there, they dropped the water to about 1,200 CFS in order for CPW and this team to go in and do fish studies. And I want to thank Jim White. Corey, I did have a long conversation with Jim. It was really spectacular. He sent me kind of a report. And if anyone's interested and he's willing to share that, it's more their kind of internal report of their activities on the river. But they spent the following week down on the Dolores doing fish counts and fish studies. Next slide. So again, on the right, these are both photographs of what the river often looks like. And desiccated fish and killing and sort of murky, swampy molasses type water where there actually is water. And if you're interested in this river, there is a documentary film called River of Sorrows, which is what the Dolores is referred to because of all the things that we're describing. But on the left is sort of this major rapid Snaggletooth, which is a significant rapid. That's what it often looks like. Next slide. And this is what it looked like at the end of May. And it's a doozy in terms of a rapid. But just to see, there are native fish doing everything they can to survive in the little pools and the little spots where there are opportunities for life. A lot of these fish travel up river from the Colorado River. The San Miguel also flows into this area, and all of them are ripping right now. And so just to show kind of what we're doing, and obviously the work of our team to document these native fish in the canyon, I just wanted to sort of highlight this. Next slide. And then in the spirit of focusing on that other four-letter word, park, you all know that we were concerned and heard about Hanging Lake and obviously the devastation that occurred in Hanging Lake. I hiked up there a couple of weeks ago, next slide, and these are kind of hard to see. They've had a ton of water this year as well. And the trail and the access point has actually, it's been closed a lot of the seasons so far just because they've had some slides and some other things. But the work on the trail continues. The temporary trail is in place. You can see some of the flagging there. And lots of work being done there. Lots of water in this canyon right now as well. Next slide. Some of the benching, a lot of the debris that has come down has been utilized as part of the trail recovery. Next slide. I know Commissioner Touchton and Reading a year or so ago were up there. Just lots and lots of water. So my tribute to GoCo is my GoCo t-shirt. But Spouting Rock, which is the waterfall just above Hanging Lake, you normally wouldn't see that waterfall. You'd see it like just below it. There's just a little spouting rock. So there's lots of water coming out. Next slide. I think there's a little flow there. It's just ripping right now and just really, really beautiful. So again, lots of great work with our partner GoCo and a lot of restoration work. The final sort of regular permanent trail work has actually not started. There's been some contractor challenges, and they're really trying to think about how to make that a more sustainable trail in the future, but it is coming. So that was at least the report I got last week. Next slide. And then the last one, shout out to the Northwest and Travis's team. My husband and I ran what we normally get in, we put in at Loma and run it to Westwater, which is about 25 miles of the Colorado River. And instead this year thought, why don't we start 5 miles upriver, because it's running at 28,000 CFS and you can run it in about 3 hours. I mean, it's just going so fast. Next slide. And I just want to give a shout out again to our state parks. This is a beautiful boat ramp, and I thank Eric Lowe, senior manager at the park. We camped the night before. So much less chaos than at the Loma boat ramp. I'm probably revealing secrets as I'm sharing this, but it just was really the campground was beautiful. It was the boat ramp was fantastic, and as we floated past the other downriver boat ramp that had like 30 boats getting in, we waved and floated by. So just again, a nice opportunity to see the James Robb State Park, the the Colorado River section in Fruta, and to see the great staff and everybody doing the great work that they're doing at our state parks. So as you're outgoing, other outgoing parks and outdoor utilization commissioner, just thought I would bring those stories to the table. So thank you very much. B-. B-, B+, maybe? Okay, anything else? Thank you for enduring that, and thanks to the team. I had some calls with Corey and Travis and others just to make sure I had my facts right, and really appreciate some of the staff that got on the phone with me to make sure I wasn't misrepresenting the activities. So, all right. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, so we will turn now to the DNR update. And I know Executive Director Gibson is in Washington, D.C., so we are in really good hands with Tim Mock.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the Commission, Director Davis. Tim Mock, Deputy Director for the Department of Natural Resources. On behalf of the department, we just want to thank Adams State University for the hospitality in hosting us today. Director Gibbs is in the D.C. area this week attending the National Fire Commission meeting. We've got one announcement in terms of staffing. The Executive Director's Office has officially hired a tribal liaison. Stacy Coleman will begin with our office next week. She previously served as Senior Counsel and Tribal Coordinator for the Department of Justice Environmental Enforcement Section. So we are very excited to have that position filled. We are working on developing our new WIGs, the Wildly Important Goals, with Governor Polis. Those are not finalized yet, but it's going to be probably safe to say that we're going to be concentrating and continuing on Parks and Wildlife's goals of diversifying funding for Parks and Wildlife and balancing conservation and recreation. The Water Conservation Board will be focusing on the water plan implementation. On to the State Land Board. On June 14th, Next Era Energy hosted a turning on ceremony at the Thunder Wolf Solar Installation in El Paso County that is located on state trust land. The site will generate 200 plus megawatts of energy, plus have battery capacity to store 100 megawatts. Just for a reference, 1 megawatt generates enough electricity to power roughly 525 homes for a year. The site will be one of the largest producers of solar energy in the country. In May, the commissioners approved the acquisition of the 7,000-acre Williams Park Ranch in Routt County. The property will be leased for grazing and hunting recreation. And then Senate Bill 1 passed both chambers and was recently signed by Governor Polis. Among other things, it provides funding for CDOT to remove existing structures from a site located on state trust lands in the Eagle Vale area to facilitate construction of an affordable housing project. State Land Board has hired planning and engineering firms to determine the full site potential. We expect, working with the town of Avon, that this will facilitate a rapid development plan for a phase 1 development, which is expected to include 80 plus units of workforce housing. On to CWCB, there's a Colorado River update on Thursday, June 15th. Department of Interior announced a formal process to develop future Lake Powell and Lake Mead operating guidelines, often called the post-2006 negotiations. The new guidelines will replace the 2007 Colorado River interim guidelines. The formal process to initiate the EIS environmental impact statement was announced through the notice of intent on the Federal Register, and next steps will include public input, tribal nation consultation, and the development of alternatives as required under NEPA. The NOI will be available for public comment until August 15th, 2023. And then very shortly here, the Department of Natural Resources is announcing that Director Rebecca Mitchell will become the state's first full-time commissioner to the Upper Colorado River Commission. Ms. Mitchell will now navigate the deep challenges of the Colorado River in this upgraded position that will be supported by an interdisciplinary team within the Department of Natural Resources and the Colorado Attorney General's office. The team was established with funding in the 2003-24 budget that was passed by the General Assembly and signed by Governor Polis, and will greatly enhance the state's position in the Colorado River interstate issues and upcoming negotiations on operations of Lake Mead and Lake Powell. Mitchell served previously as the director of CWCB for 6 years and has been serving in the dual role after accepting the governor-appointed position of the Colorado River Commissioner in 2019. This is the first time Colorado has had a full-time state-employed Upper Colorado River Commissioner. She has Served on the UCRC, like I said, since 2019, which is an interstate water administrative agency that was established in 1948 through which the 4 upper division states coordinate on the Colorado River matters. And just as a frame of reference, many of you all know that the Colorado River provides water for 40 million people and 30 tribes spread over 7 states and 2 countries. So we've got a lot at stake. The avalanche numbers for this year's avalanche season are in. There were 5,792 avalanches reported. 900 of those were human-triggered avalanches, with 122 people caught in the avalanches, 11 deaths as a result of the avalanches. The State Forest Service has recently awarded $9.5 million to local governments spanning 16 Colorado counties. In its first year, the incentives for local government grant program. This will fund 28 forest management and wildfire mitigation projects around the state. All awardees have established dedicated revenue sources to fund local forest management or wildfire mitigation efforts on a long-term basis, and this helps with their commitment. The local efforts to reduce the wildfire risk are vital for the safety of all Coloradans, and this round of funding will treat about 7,500 acres and support dozens of jobs dedicated to implementing wildfire mitigation measures and educating private landowners throughout these counties. And then the State Forest Service produced a video about the Golden West Pine Mill in a bit of a feel-good story here. This was the agency's 2022 Partner of the Year, and several staff had visited the mill in early June. When the forests are overstocked with stands of small diameter trees, the risk of uncharacteristic high-intensity wildfire increases, and so finding new ways to use these small trees helps improve forest health and resiliency. Andy Hines, the owner of the Golden West Pine Mills in Ault, Colorado, works diligently to combat this small forest problem, and as I mentioned, was recognized as CFSS 2022 Partner of the Year. They have developed a product through a manufacturing process called Edge Glue and Rip, or Edgar. And this sawmill in northeastern Colorado now creates Edgar products, and the results are strong, high-quality mass timber products made from otherwise undesirable small diameter timber. And then finally, the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission, formerly known as the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, announced the appointment of a governing body of the Colorado Produced Water Consortium. The consortium was created by the Colorado General Assembly to help reduce the consumption of fresh water within oil and gas operations. The initial members are John Mesner, Commissioner for the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission, Tracy Kosloff with the State Engineer's Office, and Tricia Oath with the Department of Environmental Health and Protection Agency with CDPHE. John, Tracy, and Tricia bring years of experience and wealth of expertise to this role to reduce the use of fresh water and increase the recycling of produced water in oil and gas operations. The consortium's responsibilities also include making recommendations toward developing an informed path for reuse and recycling of produced water inside and potentially outside of oil and gas operations within the state, measures to address barriers associated with utilization of produced water, and research to evaluate analytical and toxicological methods employed during the produced water treatment. The consortium will be made up of 31 members representing state, federal agencies, research institutions, environmental groups, industry, local governments, environmental justice groups, and disproportionately impacted community. And that concludes my report this morning. Thank you.
Any questions for Tim? Commissioner Haskett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one comment. There's a huge conflict with renewable energy and wildlife, and particularly solar, and we're losing critical habitat and migration corridors to solar in particular. But I asked that DNR would step up and try to change some of this and to look at the oil and gas regulations where they're not allowed to do that. And maybe we can report back to me sometime about what we're trying to do to fix that.
Will do. Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Adams.
Thank thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that update. I too, Commissioner Haskett, I echo concerns around renewable energy infrastructure and impacts to wildlife corridors. We've actually, as a commission, for those who are listening and may not be aware, created recommendations and guidance for solar companies on how they can best mitigate any kind of issues with wildlife as a part of the installation, monitoring, and all the other processes. I'm curious if, because this is the largest in the state or something, it's large, and it's on state trust land, if there is any kind of studies or research that is being done, it seems like this is a great time to start that process as we continue to assess the impacts on wildlife by renewable energy infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for that question. I'm not aware, and that doesn't mean that those reports or that we aren't studying the issue. I do know that we are paying attention, and Parks and Wildlife often serves as a consulting agency in the development of these, oftentimes commenting about the ability to manage or maintain those wildlife corridors. Are often part of those conversations in comment letters. In terms of the studies, I don't know if Director Davis might know, but I can certainly look into that and get back to you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I mean, again, there are scientists with degrees at the table who I'm sure hopefully will echo that, you know, this seems to be an incredible research opportunity. Research costs money. So as you're doing all of this incredible work, I would love to be able to tap into y'all's budget to be able to ensure that it's not impacting our wildlife. Thank you so much.
Mr. Phillips.
Cool. Thank you, Tim. And not to keep on the same subject, but besides the wildlife impact, that's in my backyard, basically, this big solar farm, and having a huge impact on our local community. It's displacing some ranchers, some neighbors, and friends that we've known forever. So just putting that out there, I'm all about renewables and a long-term play. And some of the good suggestions I've heard is, you know, sterile farm ground along the Arkansas. Out east, it's not growing anything but weeds. It's not great habitat, big acreages, and moving out there, but it's farther from transmission lines. But if it is a long-term play, looking at, you know, getting transmission lines to those areas so we're not having the same impact on wildlife or communities and businesses in the area. It's nothing new, but just wanted to put that out there because I do know some people that are hurting pretty bad from it.
That's very good input, and we'll take that back. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Tim, who I believe, oh, Commissioner Touchton.
I just wanted to pile on, so. Just, you know, I think Commissioner Haskett made a good point in that we do have those rules for oil and gas development, and I think it's a pretty good starting place that could be applied to solar and wind, because, you know, there's no free lunch, and particularly from a wildlife perspective, at least what I've observed is the impacts are pretty severe. And also, like, I've lived next to a wind farm for, they're loud. They do, I mean, I know that was a major concern with setbacks from oil and gas drilling operations. And, you know, wind is obviously different, but you are putting a soundscape out there that should be probably set back from where people are living or important wildlife areas. So anyway, just I know it's on your radar screen, but we really do need to get ahead of the renewables and the transmission lines.
Thank you.
Commissioner Adams.
And again, I don't want it to seem like I'm against renewables. Obviously, we need to move away from fossil fuels. However, I do feel like we've been kind of told half-truths around renewables and the impacts that they have not only to wildlife, but to communities, business, et cetera. And so in addition to how do we get smart about our energy infrastructure, I think there's also a conversation around energy consumption and reducing overuse of energy. The United States uses 9 times more energy than is recommended by the UN at the aggregate, and so we have a heightened responsibility, a degrowth responsibility, if you will, not a degrowth for the global south, but a regenerative responsibility as well. So, you know, I am pro renewables, but not at the cost of the things that we need in our ecosystem to survive. Thank you.
Commissioner Blackout.
Thank you. My comment about this is that I brought this up 2 years ago when we were in Trinidad, and I felt like I was sitting there by myself talking alone, like my concerns about how exclusionary those panel things are, the fencing and everything, and this is really encouraging that everyone else is kind of seeing that light. I still really want to encourage the industry to do better with their technology and what they can do instead of having us do more work to mitigate what they could probably do from the onset. So thank you.
Okay, anything else for Tim? Anything else, Tim? Okay. We also are in good hands with Wayne East. I think Kate is floating on a certain river. I'm really jealous. So Wayne, Department of Agriculture update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and for the record, I'm the Wildlife Programs Manager at the Colorado Department of Agriculture. As you mentioned, Commissioner Greenberg, she sends her regrets, but I kind of question how sincere those regrets are. She's currently floating the Green River with CDA's insectary team, the National Park Service, and a small group of ag and water leaders, and I can only assume that since you're all here, your invitation was lost in the mail, just like mine was too. All joking aside, I really am happy to be here. It's always good to see the colleagues and friends, but this university, while I didn't attend here, my late mother, received both of her degrees from here. My father received one of his 2 degrees from here, and he went on to have a 36-year career for this agency. And my brother also got his degree from here, and he works for the Nez Perce tribe in Idaho in their fisheries and hatchery system. So this university really has had a big impact on my family. I want to continue on with the CCA. Many of you had mentioned that, and thank you, Commissioner Adams, for your comments on that. As you saw from a slide from Commissioner Haskett, Director Davis, Commissioner Haskett, and Director Davis, I bet you had at least 10 staff there, at least one, if not both days. As Commissioner Adams has mentioned, she's been there many times, and other commissioners and staff have attended in the past. And as always, I just want to thank you for your support of private landowners and agriculture. Just as with DNR and CPW at CDA, we are deep in our strategic planning for our priorities for the years ahead. These past 4 years, we've been driving our work toward greater economic resilience, voluntary stewardship, supporting future generations, and animal health and welfare. We will continue advancing this work. In addition, there are other issue areas that require more of our support. Moving forward, you'll see CDA put more emphasis on healthy food access and water resilience. On the former, we are building out our community food access program, which will offer grants to small retailers and farmers to do business and increase local food access. This past legislative session, the legislature created a tax credit for this program, which we will also be standing up this year. On the waterfront, we will soon be posting a brand new position of Ag Water Advisor to help advance water plan priorities, work on policy, and support producers. Please be on the lookout for that position announcement. In addition, we will be hiring for not 1, but 2 climate marketing specialists to help open up new market opportunities for Colorado producers that are implementing climate-smart ag practices. And we have a lot of major events coming up this summer. In late July, all Western State Departments of Ag will be in Denver for a 4-day meeting hosted by CDA. It's called WASDA. It's essentially our AFWA, if you will. That's the Western Association of Departments of Ag. So that would be WAFWA, I guess, would be the equivalent on your side. And then we've got August 14th to 16th, CDA and DNR are co-hosting the Northeast Colorado Climate Resilience Tour. And of course, the 151st State Fair is just around the corner with an expanded Centennial Farm and Ranch event. The Commissioner's Ice Cream Social will be back. There will be a legislative barbecue and the 3rd annual Governor's Plate. The dates are August 25th through September 4th. CDA will send out more information and official invites to all of you commission members, so please be on the lookout for that. Last thing I want to mention is about Senate Bill 275, which pertains to wild horses. If you haven't had a chance to look at that bill, it's roughly a 2-year program, and I will be managing the implementation on behalf of CDA. Some of the aspects of this bill include a 14-member working group that includes representation from DNR. The working group will develop recommendations for the legislature and the governor's office. And beyond the working group, there will also be some additional immunocontraceptive work that will be above and beyond the longstanding partnerships between BLM and local nonprofit organizations. And there may also be some financial assistance included in this for BLM for some of their infrastructure work. We're very early in the planning process for this. This bill just passed, and I can provide more information at future meetings if it's something of interest to this commission. And with that, Madam Chair, it concludes my update.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments for Wayne? Commissioner Touchton and then Commissioner Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Wayne, how is the, I want to call it bird flu. I know it's a more sophisticated form of bird flu, but how is that, that doing?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Knock on wood, we're kind of in a lull right now. So we're hoping that it's going to die down. In the past, at least in the U.S., these outbreaks have kind of come and gone. They've ebbed and flowed. There's been concern about this specific variety of avian influenza, that it may be here for a long time. We do have some backyard flocks. I know there's still a few wild birds that are coming up with it, but right now the numbers are down on avian influenza.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks so much for the update. I just wanted to ask, in addition to DNR representation, who else will be on the Wild Horses Council?
I can get a specific answer if you just give me a minute here.
Also Google it.
It's delineated very clearly in the bill. There's appointments by the legislature. There's going to be nonprofit, Western Slope representation, of course, BLM. Les Owen is going to be representing our agency on that 14-member working group. And the goal of the working group is to come up with recommendations, for the legislature and the governor's office. Yeah, it's very clearly laid out in the bill, and I can share it with you right now.
Okay, any other questions for Wayne, who I think is going to stick around, hang out with us? Okay. Okay, we'll turn it to, he came back for another meeting after May. So I think that says something, and finally has his family joining him in a week. So it has been a busy time for our new director, and I'll turn it over to him for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I don't know if it's a intellect issue or I'm just stubborn, but darn it, I love you guys. So here I am again. Appreciate that the agenda is and the elbow room is a little bit more relaxed here, so I'm excited. I got a little fan here to blow some air on me so I don't get overheated, so people are taking good care of me. Maybe I'd like to begin just recognizing the commission and Madam Chair, you in particular, for your leadership over the last couple years. It's not been without conflict, and you've helped us really, truly navigate it in a very professional and efficient way. So much appreciation, and also much appreciation to Commissioner Adams for your leadership and your energy. Like whenever I'm feeling a little bit just off, I just need to talk with Commissioner Adams, and it's like, whoo, battery recharged. Here we go. So thank you, and to all of the commission members. I just appreciate the heck out of who you are, who you represent, how you represent them, because this, in my career, commissioners, if the public doesn't know, it's kind of a volunteer, tons of workload, and this particular commission always, in at least these two meetings, has shown up very prepared and representing their interests very well. And you saw in the beginning how much extra work, so all of these commissioners are going above and beyond, in my opinion. So much appreciation to all of you.
Maybe there I shift to, well, I just have to, so sorry, this is going off script a little bit. I'm learning that I should not be in pictures because I think that whole, the TV adds 25 pounds is true, or I need to go on a diet, or just stay out of all pictures. So much appreciation to Commissioner Haskett for reminding me I need to go jogging more often.
Elk walking.
Yeah, elk walking's right around the corner, so let's take pictures right after my elk hikes. I also just want to say there's a lot of really amazing people that help this commission pull off these meetings. So in particular, I want to recognize Alex Gutierrez from Beacon, who does all the on-site audio mixing for us. Maybe we can work on a little cool music on the breaks. And there's like 15 CPW staff that help us pull off these virtual meetings. So in other words, those folks that can't, from the public that can't make it here in person, these staff go above and beyond to make sure that we're all still connecting with that broader Colorado public. So much appreciation. And then staffing is always kind of the fun part of these jobs, kind of as CPW evolves and grows, and we much appreciation to DNR and Governor Polis for their ongoing support for our budget requests. It means we get to hire really cool people, elevate folks that are well-deserving and talented, and it comes at a potential consequence in that CPW is so loaded with talent that making these decisions on staffing and promotions in particular are a double-edged sword, without doubt. So I want to just start by thanking Mitch Martin in particular. He was the acting Southeast Region Manager, did an outstanding job on our behalf, continues to do so in supporting our new Southeast Region Manager, who's Frank McGee. And I see his little half smile in the audience there. And Frank has already hopped into it and is just doing a spectacular job. So much appreciation, Frank. Rebecca Farrell has done an amazing job on the communications, the marketing. We have a wildly important goal. I'm learning the lingo a little bit here. That Keep Colorado Wild, a website redesign, like those things wouldn't be in a good place in the absence of Rebecca's talent and leadership in the acting role. And Kristen Cannon also just doing a fabulous job there in acting. I think she's perhaps excited to get back to her day job because I think she was doing double duty there. But Kristen, thanks for all of your efforts too, and look forward to your continued leadership in the organization moving forward. Now, I would like to bring up that we had a new deputy director position created, lots of support for that position, and Heather Disney Dugan is our new deputy director, so I couldn't be happier. She's been a tremendous help to me in the transition between her acting role in the director position and me coming on board. It's been seamless, and I would argue she's demonstrated patience and resiliency in helping CPW move forward. So Kelly Kamerer, she'll probably kill me for that pronunciation, but she has accepted our new assistant director for information and education. Kelly has a volume of experience in private sector around communications, marketing, and IT, so and she has really good energy. She's an empathetic, humble, supportive leadership style. So I'm excited to add her into the pool of talent that CPW has, and she starts June 30th, so you will get a chance to meet her in person coming up here quick. And then also Sarah Hamming is our new legislative assistant, so she'll work really closely. She's a CPW staff person. She'll work really closely with Daphne at DNR, just making sure that CPW's legislative priorities are being advanced, that we're staying on top of it, and we're also staying on top of the things that might not be beneficial to CPW going forward. So welcome to Sarah. I was going to bring up the Meeker trip, but apparently Commissioner Haskett stole my thunder. But I want to thank her for hauling me out to Meeker on a weekend and introducing me to some fabulous human beings. Darby is our biologist out there, and Darby drove us around, maybe way too many miles for my physical condition. But what a wealth of knowledge and a spectacularly talented human being that keeps our wildlife going out there along with his CPW teammates. And I would be remiss if, and this is something I want us to really pay attention to as we go forward with, especially with the wolf reintroduction. We have Ranching for Wildlife, and Commissioner Haskett introduced me to some pretty phenomenal Ranching for Wildlife folks out there who are really just trying to help us all figure out how do we do this well, and how do we do it in a manner that makes sure that our rural lands also aren't just trying to continue to survive, but that we're trying to help them thrive in the mix of wolf reintroduction in particular. And that's for the public, that's a big darn deal. We have, like, I don't know, I'm looking for Reed. Like, I want to say just short of 1 million acres, I think, in Ranching for Wildlife. Yes, no, maybe so. Suffice to say, it's a lot. And these folks do, this isn't just a hunting program. I want to make that really crystal clear. These folks are doing, well, I think that program has changed a lot of minds about wildlife being a nuisance to these lands, to wildlife being an asset to these lands. And it's not just big game critters. There's folks doing sage-grouse recovery projects. I mean, they are really trying to live that kind of broader biodiversity and landscape health out there on our behalf. So that, kudos to them, much appreciation. Love to see that program grow, and definitely look forward to staying in touch with those folks so that as we navigate these new things coming at them, we navigate those together, and we're mindful of the potential of positive and negative effects. Want to just verbalize a reminder that we have WAFWA coming up. And so I'm not totally clear on the process for this commission to figure out who gets to go, but we'll have a team of CPW folks going down there, and I look forward to hopefully seeing commissioners down there at WAFWA. And that's July 10th through the 14th in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then lastly, I just want to apologize to the commission. My intentions have always been to stay very, very connected with you, and things have been pretty hectic, but I want to just recommit that I will be paying a lot more attention and connecting with all of you moving forward as I get my feet underneath me. So thank you.
Okay, questions for Director Davis? Commissioner Reading. Phantom light. Yeah, I would just underscore for those who have been to WAFWA, there's a number of us here, typically, just depending on budget, 2 or 3 commissioners, sort of depends sort of on the year. And given that it's close, it might be a really good opportunity. Sometimes it's in Oklahoma City, Commissioner Phillips, in the summertime. Just saying. So if you are interested, just see Director Davis or Laura, and they'll figure out how to make that happen. It's a really great opportunity to visit with commissioners from other states who are wrestling with some of the same issues and other issues that we're not wrestling with, which, you know, sometimes is good to hear. Things that involve oceans and whales and, you know, other things like that. So, okay. Anything else for that? All right. I think we'll go ahead and hear from Justin and then take a quick break and just adjust our schedule slightly. So come on up, Justin. For members of the public, we are on item number 9. This is our financial update.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Justin Roeder. I'm the Assistant Director for Financial and Capital Services for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and I'm bringing to you a June financial update. My agenda item is a standing item and always called a financial update. Excuse me. But this is a little bit less on the financials, and this is a little bit more on a tool that I hope helps you interpret the financials that I present to you on a regular basis. So the basis of the tool is the data that goes into your financial report, the sources and uses report that I present quarterly at this point. It's a lot of numbers, and at the Q2 report, which ended in December, I introduced it with even more numbers. So in its current format, on the left side here, there's kind of a gray dividing line. We have the kind of 5 years of actuals through the current quarter. So this is the Q3 report. And so you're looking at the 5 years of actuals on the left there. And then on the right, between the two gray lines, is the current quarter compared to the same quarter last year. And on the end is kind of the previous year total to give kind of a magnitude of scale. However, we are transitioning to a report. This is in my memo. There's a link to a website. It's unfortunately a Google Sites address at this point. We'll bring that into the CPW brand when it's possible, but we wanted to get this available to you and to the public. And it has a graphical representation of the numbers, and it also provides some further drill down ability. So this is kind of the year, similar information to the bottom line reports of revenues and expenditures. And then here on the bottom, you can see that there's the ability to break it down by individual cash funds. So you can see those results by a cash fund to maybe give you a little bit more insight to what is being reported there. So going back to the commission report, I'm separated out just the revenue section here at the top. And so when I look at this, looking at the left side first, I see in the year over year in fiscal year 23 and 22, I see that it's more or less steady, but if we move to the core, 257, 258 million, it's very similar. But if we look over to the quarter, you can see that the quarter has been the quarter's different. There's a lot more revenue in this current quarter than we had seen in previous years. Also noticing in the year over year, I noticed a drop in general fund revenues and a drop in federal fund revenues that I would like to know more about. So if we drill into the revenue summaries of on the website, this is a different tab that just focuses on revenue. And again, it has that drill down detail at the bottom. So in the federal funds column, I can see that the drop is largely attributed to the State Parks Cash Fund. Which I suspect is related to Colorado clays, just based on my background knowledge of what we've spent federal on in park system. The general fund shows that we had a one-time transfer of $5 million to the OHV fund, which reflects the General Assembly paying us back for money that they had borrowed the year before. And we see that license increases in the State Parks Cash Fund, which I suspect is Keep Colorado Wild, and we will confirm that further in other areas of the database. So looking just at the expense side of the commission report, I notice a rather substantial red number there, which is acquisitions. And so we can drill in to see similar information, which is that the majority of that drop in acquisitions is direct purchase of land. So that it, again, would be related to Colorado clays. And then you see that the wildlife cash fund has also seen a drop. And that is just most likely the timing of the RFP and the acquisitions that are approved in the RFP. Just showing variability over a year. Also in the commission report is the detail on the license, passes, and fees that we sell, kind of the report of our product sales that drives our revenues for our core businesses. So this is how you would see it in the commission report now, with 5 years of money on the left and 5 years of volume on the right. There is a tab that drills into that information. So this is what we call the donut tab. Due to some licensing issues, we've since changed that to a decomposition chart, but the data behind it's the same, and the kind of intent's the same, is that you can use this to kind of navigate and see the magnitude of revenues and learn more about the various categories included in your report. So looking at, this is the overall product sales. See the wildlife dominating, with park passes and entry fees being the next category, which was of interest to us earlier because I wanted to know how much Keep Colorado Wild was influencing that number. And you can see here that the half of the chart here on the right is the Keep Colorado Wild Pass sales, but we also see substantial vehicle and daily pass sales still showing up in our revenue. One of the things I'm interested in is how that is affected over time by Keep Colorado Wild, and I'll get into a final slide on that at the end. But I wanted to bump back out to the kind of top level of the revenue charts, and instead go into another one that maybe has been on our report, but we've never talked about, which is parks, permits, and fees, which is separate from the passes there on the chart. And so you can see that that's camping. We can see electric camping is a majority of our revenues, breaks down even further. But what else is in the other permits and user fees that is included in that category? And that breaks it down even further. So you see that we group picnic sites, dump fees, Christmas tree draw are all various fees that we charge that go into that overall revenue picture. So as I mentioned, I wanted to look a little bit more at that Keep Colorado Wild number, and so I pulled the kind of 2-year data into this chart here. The bluish color is current year park passes. The greenish number was previous year park passes, and then the darker blue number is the Keep Colorado Wild sales. So we can see that over the end of last summer, we had strong sales in passes, but they were less than the year before. We can see the kind of similar trend of a downward towards the December, January time period. And then we see flat through the cold months, but that's where the Keep Colorado Wild passes really have started to accelerate, with substantial revenues each month coming in. And we can see that park pass sales aren't flat. They're still coming up that curve, but just not as much. So I think this last year, or this last month, where we have substantial sales in previous years, will be interesting to see for the vehicle daily and annual pass sales. So overall, it looks like, although we are currently cannibalizing some of our pass sales with our Keep Colorado Wild Pass, it's not as significant as I thought, but it's also the first year of the program, so we're have to keep an eye on that going forward. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Adams.
Did you do this special? Had you been planning this whole time? This dashboard is amazing. Thank you so much for helping not only the public, but other policymakers, around in our legislature, in our cities, in our county levels, just to see where the money is and how it flows. Again, it's amazing. It's a miracle. It's magic. It's the incredible skills and expertise that you all bring to the table to create something like this. And I'm excited about this new assistant director in information and education to even come and be able to work with the team to continue to build on this effort, but just exceptional. So thank you so much.
Commissioner Touchton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me first echo that comment. I mean, I think this is wonderful, and we get a lot of questions sometimes, and this is a big transparency addition. So, kudos for bringing this thing out. The questions I had were one was on the rate of adoption of the the opt-in rate on the Keep Colorado Wild Pass, and how we're doing on the rate of people opting in.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we do monitor that weekly. It is something of a keen interest to me. So we started off about a 28% opt-in rate during the first week. We have seen months in excess of 30%. We've seen months below 28, or weeks, sorry, in excess of 30% and below. The overall average is right about 30%. Past couple weeks have been slightly below. I think we're at 29 point something this previous week, and the week before that was at 27, which that made me concerned, but just tiny little numbers in the data set, really. Included in the reporting in that 30% is no fee plates. So there are categories of plates that get the Keep Colorado Wild Pass that are automatically given or that have no fee associated with it. One example would be government plates. So our state parks vehicles now have state parks passes as well.
Okay, first. Oh, well, thank you. Just to remind me, what was our projection of like we've tried to predict the opt-in rate. How are we doing versus our projections?
So the projections were wide. The survey that we had conducted had categories. So if you looked at people only electing for one pass in a household and only those extremely likely to opt in, we are at about 26 million. If we were looking at multiple vehicles and the extremely likely and most likely to opt in, we were looking closer to 56 million. Based on the adoption rates that we're seeing so far, we're probably going to be about 46 million is what it's looking like. Obviously, multiple vehicles and time of registrations complicates the projections because I can't predict what people will do very well there. But that is $10 million above our goal that's in the statute of 36 million, which is kind of the state park operations plus backcountry search and rescue plus avalanche increases that we wanted to see. And then that extra 10 million will be split 50-50 between parks cash and wildlife cash.
Okay, thank you. One more car-related question. The license plate, the four-letter word wolf license plate, was for paying for non-lethal preventative measures. I've just heard anecdotally that it's doing really well, but have you tracked that?
I think it's projected to be well. I don't think it's available for sale yet.
Yeah, but wasn't there like a pre-sign-up or something?
Oh, I'm not aware.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, thank you, Jess.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that, but I think there has to be a certain pre-sign-up for it to actually happen. So that might be what you're seeing or hearing about. Any questions for Justin? Anything else? Thank you, Justin. I would concur. Presentations have improved. The synthesizing is fantastic, and the transparency is really improved. So thank you for that, and thanks for the feedback that got us there. Okay, it is 10:04. If it is the will of everybody, just what we've got going on, we will take a 11-minute break and still return at 10:15. Thank you. Okay, we will reconvene if everyone will take their seats, please. Okay, for members of the public, we are on item number 10. I want to correct my own record from earlier. I mistitled and also misnamed. Gina Bassi is the river outfitter ranger that we bumped into on the Dolores. So I want to make sure and correct that. And then also, obviously, the fish team is part of Reed's shop, certainly in the Southwest, in Corey's region, and just to make sure that was corrected for the record. Okay, we are on item number 10, which is Chapter W9. So we'll turn that over to Hillary first. Is that right? Okay, great. Go ahead, Hillary.
Yep, so like you said, we're on agenda item number 10 for Chapter W9 Wildlife Properties. This is step 3 of 3 found on the yellow paper. Over the last 7 to 8 years, state wildlife areas, or SWAs, have seen a dramatic increase in use, causing a corresponding rise in negative impacts on wildlife and wildlife-related recreation. Staff has worked over that time with internal working groups as well as external work group to see what can be done. Proposed regulatory changes include changes to the general provisions as well as the property-specific regulations. This was a major undertaking that required updating the entire chapter at once, instead of changing the general provisions first and then focusing on the property-specific regulations the next year. In addition to the meeting materials for this item that you received, this morning we also sent you the tiers for the SWAs from the work group. During the process, CPW has received a large amount of public feedback on these changes. Where appropriate, CPW has updated the proposed changes in response to that feedback. If these changes are approved today, they will go into effect on August 1st of this year and will be incorporated into the Rec Lands brochure for this year. This is an action item, and there is public comment on this, so we can take questions.
Okay, questions from the commission. We can go to public comment first, too, if we'd like, on this item. Okay, why don't we do that? We'll do public comment first, and then come back and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Katie Lanter, Policy and Planning Supervisor. We'll have 3 people for public comment. If I could invite Suzanne O'Neill to come up, who'll be followed by Brian Pusarella here in the room. And then we have 1 virtual public comment. Each person will get 3 minutes of time. There'll be a warning at 30 seconds, and then again when time is up.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director, Deputy Executive Director, I'm Suzanne O'Neill, and I'm the Executive Director of Colorado Wildlife Federation. I was pleased to serve on the external working group that developed the ultimate draft regulations. And, you know, I think one of the most important pieces of it was working through development of the tier system that you have, because then that enabled categorizing each individual property at the end of the fairly long process. I commend CPW also for that engagement website, because it was great that we could all submit our comments and also see everybody else's comments. And I think that is very helpful to these type of processes. I think that it's pretty clear from reading comments and in conversations I've had that there are an awful lot of people who do not understand what the purpose of state wildlife areas is as distinguished from state parks, and also how the management differs. And tweaking may need to be done, but I think we've got a really solid foundation here. There are situations, like I could cite one in the west area of Loveland as our urban areas continue to explode, where anglers have a very difficult time on summer weekends parking because they are being out-competed by those who want to paddleboard. And I would hate to see safety situations arise as well as user conflicts. So there's some issues that probably require some cleanup. But on the whole, really pleased with where we are. And I can also say that Colorado Trout Unlimited is in alignment with our comments this morning, but couldn't appear in person. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Brian Pusarella, and that'll be followed by Adam Krieger.
Hi, thank you. My name is Brian Pucciarella, and I'm here to represent SLV Go, Generation Wild Coalition, and recreational boaters of the SLV. I'm here to speak up against the proposed changes in use of recreational vehicles on SWAs to those only allowed for hunting and fishing. SLV Go is dedicated to providing equitable and inclusive outdoor recreation opportunities. And as a regional partner under CPW, we know how critical it is to find solutions that balance conservation and outdoor recreation. Not allowing recreational access to the Rio Grande is a consistent problem in the valley, and this regulation would further exacerbate that problem and hinder all that our coalition has worked to improve over the last decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have our virtual comment. If we could get Adam Krieger unmuted, please. And Adam, looks like we have you up. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Commission, for allowing us to speak today. I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of Animals today. First, I just want to start on the Engage CPW website. By CPW's own estimate, 75% of public comments were not in favor of these changes. And I think that's because only a small percent of state residents hold hunting license. And the effect of these regulation changes is to unfairly prevent access to many Coloradans who enjoy non-consumptive wildlife recreation. The focus on hunting and fishing of all of these lands contradicts the multiple use idea that's listed in the Colorado Revised Statutes. All too often, wildlife-related recreation is just a euphemism for hunting and fishing. This excludes wildlife watching, which is a huge aspect of this that many people enjoy. Other forms of recreation too, such as paddleboarding, are now being excluded when that could just as easily be under the umbrella of wildlife-related recreation, as people enjoy seeing aquatic wildlife when they do this. It's almost ridiculous to think of some of these impacts that are being out there, that somehow the non-consumptive users are more impactful than the hunters and fishers who are removing wildlife from these properties and also leaving trash and all sorts of things behind them. Secondly, the dog changes also seem arbitrary. Allowing dogs to roam freely can be highly disruptive and destructive to wildlife. So CPW should really not be allowing their presence off leash during hunting activities, which these changes do. This makes even less sense when we realize that dogs are now being prevented even on leash. No one can bring their dogs onto these properties. It just seems arbitrary, and there's no reason why this should go forward. This is only emphasized by the fact that a Colorado Open Records Act request submitted to CPW returned with no reports or justification or information regarding the decisions and why these negative impacts that have been alleged and much discussed and are probably a good reason to look at the situation. There's no information could be found about that. And so I think this is why CPW should look at additional alternatives that could address these alleged impacts and overcrowding and trash and littering, all of these things. Other options should be pursued without arbitrarily favoring hunting and fishing activities above other forms of wildlife recreation. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on this item.
Okay, open back up for any discussion or comment before we act on this item. Commissioner Adams, and I'm reminded by our OIT team as well, we are still getting a little bit of feedback from the fans. If you're sitting next to someone and you want to turn on your light and their light is on, if you can just wait. It's the combination of the two that's a little bit challenging. So Commissioner Adams.
Just point of clarification, this is for any comments that we have to what was shared or just comments to this, to the proposed changes? I just needed to clarify what I can speak to right now.
Either,
Okay.
anything,
I
anything
just
on
wasn't
this
sure if
item.
it was
Yeah,
just
anything
to
on this
comment
item.
back or just this item. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the comments that were shared before. As you know, we had quite extensive conversations and discussions about the existence of of expanding the state wildlife program so that non-consumptive users could contribute to the program. They were prohibited from contributing before. So again, it's not one of those, we were here first. None of us were here first in this room. So that's always something that I like to keep in mind. And I'm just grateful that we created pathways where more people can contribute in a non-consumptive way to our state wildlife areas. I do have concerns around the recreational vessels. In its totality, quite frankly, both for consumptive and non-consumptive users. I've been inspired recently by learning more about places like the Buddhist monastery in Mongolia, where they have essentially state wildlife areas where no humans really go into. I mean, there needs to be more of these spaces as we have extensive pressures on our public lands all over the place. And so I do have some concerns around that. I'm open to hearing the need for use in hunting in a critical and substantive way that is going to support wildlife, and what percentage actually of hunters and anglers use recreational vehicles as a part of the hunting. I can also see people buying a hunting license, or buying a fishing license, buying a cheap rod, putting it on their stand-up paddleboard and not fishing all day and still enjoying it. So I just feel like we're creating a loophole that is not going to address the needs that we have. As far as the seasonal closures, we can all expect more seasonal closures. That is just the reality of the situation that we are living in, which is why we want to try and create more state parks and wildlife areas, work with our federal land agencies, as well as city and state, our city and county open space and park programs, so that we are not overcrowding a particular area. But, our climate is where it is right now, and we can all expect to be inconvenienced, to be frustrated, to be, to transform the way that we engage in the outdoors. My time on this commission has transformed the way I engage in the outdoors. I used to think that, oh, this is my playground, and now I realize, no, I'm in relationship with the wildlife, water, and soil that I get to be able to recreate on, and I have extensive responsibilities around that. And then lastly, I have concerns when we pit user groups against each other. It does absolutely nothing to advance us forward. As an active angler, I've seen bad behavior with people leaving trash and all those things, similar behavior with hikers, birders, et cetera. So I just hope that we can do less throwing of stones and do more listening, learning, and collective activation together. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Other comments on this? Commissioner Haskett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been on the working group for this since the beginning, and I think we started this 4 years ago, maybe. I'm not really sure when we started it, but it's been a while. And this was a really heavy lift. It looked a lot easier than it actually was, so it turned out to be a lot harder job. And as we've worked through it, I think we've done a really good job. State wildlife areas are really for wildlife and their protection of the wildlife and the habitat. They're not for building trails, riding bikes, all these other things. That's what their original intent was, I believe. And they're not a park. But if you go to a state park, you have to pay a fee. And it really bothers me when people say, I don't want to pay to go to a state wildlife area, but yet they'll go to a state park or other places that you have to pay to get in. We still have to maintain all of this stuff. So you can't maintain something without having a fee. Recreational impacts are becoming a huge issue in this state, and wildlife is the one who is really taking the brunt of this. I just want to say I support the staff and all the recommendations. The working group worked really hard on all this. We've had meetings for 4 years, and I think we've come up with a really good plan. Thank you.
Commissioner Touchton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, just a comment first, and then I do have a question. I as Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Haskett both just said, I'm a non-consumptive user of state wildlife areas. I've got the pass, and I really appreciate actually having that opportunity to contribute and also be there without getting a ticket. So I really appreciate that. And they are areas where wildlife needs should come first, and in my view, and whatever human uses are consistent with that, we can look at. I think it's a really, really good comprehensive approach. And as I think one of the public commenters, Ms. O'Neill, said, maybe there are some tweaks, but we have to get started. And I think you guys have done an excellent job, tackling this problem. And at least, if someone wants a paraglider someplace, we can look at it. But we got to get started. And I think this is a great first effort to sort of comprehensively look at what we've got going on out there. My question was, I think you call it Tier 4, but the areas where things have changed and they might not be as great as they once were. But I am concerned about the loss of some of those areas, because at least in my perception, sometimes what has happened is urban sprawl has surrounded the area and made it, not a good place to hunt anymore, or there's a lot of conflicting uses. But that land is still important to the local communities. And I wondered what game plan we have for transitioning, if we have to, something that was a state wildlife area to some other use, so it doesn't just become part of the sprawl, but could, maybe become a park or a local. So if you could speak to that.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Deputy Director Mock, Director Davis, Commissioners, Mark Lamb, Area Wildlife Manager. Commissioner Tuxton, great question. As far as the Tier 4 properties, they were properties that could possibly leave our portfolio since they're not meeting those intended purposes anymore. We would not be wanting to just give them away. So whether it would be an exchange or a sale of some kind, that would be there. But no intention at all of just giving things away. If you remember way back when we presented the tiers ages ago, Tier 3 properties and Tier 4 properties were the ones that we could, when it was reviewed by staff, the feeling was they could handle some more recreational, non-wildlife type recreational activities than some of those Tier 1, Tier 2 properties. But even those properties being Tier 2 or 3 and 4, they still have wildlife values and they still have regulations to help manage for wildlife and people using them for wildlife. So it's not just that it's a free wheel, I can go do whatever I want on this state wildlife area. So we're still trying to manage those properties as best we can for wildlife and wildlife recreation. And the other recreational types that are out there, like we saw this morning with lots of people rafting or kayaking. So does that answer your question, Commissioner?
So many colors. It does. I just wanted to make sure that we carefully consider what, because I wouldn't want to see us like sell it to be another tract home development, but it's an open space at a minimum, and just to keep that asset, even if it has to transition what it's primarily used for.
Commissioner May.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate what Commissioner Adams says. I appreciate her perspective on this. As she says, many people view these areas as a playground. But it means a lot to me coming from Commissioner Adams, because she readily admits that was her attitude a few years ago. And I've seen it. I've watched it happen with Commissioner Adams. I've watched the commission meetings even before I was on it. She has a deep appreciation and she is sincere about her efforts to try to understand where all the sides of the issues come from. So I appreciate that about her, and I agree with her that state wildlife areas are not playgrounds. They are acquired by Colorado Parks and Wildlife for the enhancement of wildlife habitat and wildlife recreation opportunities, but it's mostly habitat. So whenever we have these so-called disputes that pit recreation against wildlife assets, I think it's a pretty easy decision for me. I always go, there are state wildlife areas in my part of the state, and all too often, until CPW was really managing them for the purposes set forth here, they were nothing more than places for people to gather for parties. Two Butte State Wildlife Area was one of our items here. I don't know how many times in my lifetime there have been drownings at Turk's Pond, at the Black Hole. I'm sorry, not Turk's Pond, but the Black Hole. It's because it is continually a source for underage drinking, for non-supervised things that go on. And I think just in the last year or two, the MERT team actually was sent there to recover a body from drowning. And at some point, CPW has to look at these things, which I think they've done. I commend them for it, and I'm in favor of what's going on here. Thank you.
Commissioner Vardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this was a tremendously significant effort. I got to join Marie on the group that worked with many other community organizations to put this together. I think we're talking about close to 287 properties. So tremendously significant, and I just want to point out how this is no small feat and recognize the staff for their tremendous efforts in this. Like Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Touchton, I agree that this isn't 100% perfect, but it's pretty close. And I think that getting it approved, moving it forward, and then giving some time for a runway to see how the community, how wildlife, how the different user groups respond is really in all of our best interest. So unless there's other comments, I would motion to approve the recommendations as made by staff.
Motion on the table. Second. I want to say something too, but we can't take a second and we can further discuss. So there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner May. And any further discussion, Commissioner Bailey?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and yeah, thanks for the comments. I would definitely agree it's a significant undertaking, and I appreciate the efforts to make it happen. I think sort of aligned with this discussion and with some of the public input, I have two questions related to process and data. So the first is, I think, again, referencing what other commissioners said, is about as this is a starting point, it would be helpful for me to know, as somebody who hasn't seen state wildlife areas discussed as much, what the process would be for, in the future, making tweaks, making changes, and if additional public input was involved, if it's going to be at a sort of large scale, is this a large scale plan that's going to undergo review every decade or so, or is it going to be at the level of each individual area? So that's the first question, related to process for change. The second question is related to data. Again, with the broad goal of maintaining wildlife habitat, I'm curious about how we are going about collecting data on the impacts of various user groups, regardless of activities, across the diversity and range of activities that are allowed in these areas on, reproduction, recruitment, habitat suitability and quality, and things like that.
Good morning again. Great questions, Commissioner. Let's address the first one. As far as future input from the public, I think today, if this project is approved, I don't think you're going to see the field staff put it on the shelf and say, okay, we're done. We know this is a work in progress. That was something that was said by then Regional Manager Brett Ackerman 3.5, 4 years ago when he first came to the commission. So this is totally a work in progress that will adjust as needed. As far as input from the public regarding this, we always, our field staff, and they're always out talking, or we're always out talking to users, whether they're hunters, fishermen, or other users. And we use that professional knowledge and input from the public to see what we need to do to adjust wildlife areas and management or even new regulations, which then would come to here. At this point, there's no formal process that we have from the public other than us talking to them or them asking us for some kind of adjustment. Does that help on the first question? Okay. The second question, as far as management, there are some wildlife areas that have collar studies going on that will start, which will really help us with migration and fawning and calving, and we'll pay attention to that on our wildlife areas, as well as the day-to-day folks who are out there. I have a wildlife area in my neck of the woods where we're looking at a timber project, and unbeknownst to us, we found a bunch of elk calves, newborn elk calves. We did not come in and say, hey, we're now going to put a seasonal restriction on it, because this was the first year we found this calving area. So as far as management to the future will depend on what we find as we manage these properties for habitat and look at collar data and just day-to-day observations. When wildlife officers and wildlife techs are out there, they're paying attention when they're driving from point A to point B, going, hey, I just saw elk here. And that is all factored into when we do our jobs. So it's that professional knowledge that we use to try to make these decisions and changes. Does that help?
Commissioner Blanca.
Thank you. I just wanted to appreciate all the work that went into this. When this project started like 3 or 4 years ago, I very specifically remember it was but one of the things that was happening, people were camping or, trying to live on the state wildlife areas. And I was checking into the DoubleTree in Westminster at 10 o'clock at night. And the gentleman, the young man who was checking me in, said, hey, you're a CPW, right? I heard that you can camp for free. Where are your best places to camp? I just converted my van and I don't want to pay rent anymore. And I thought, well, buddy, you got 12 hours because you're homeless again, I guess. So that was with the catalyst. It was like that, then it came to something much larger and more inclusive. So I just really thank you guys for the work, everybody that worked on it to get this forward. 4 years is a long time to stay on something. And so thank you for that consistency and doing it on our behalf. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? My 2 quick comments on this, because this one came to my attention, as you all know, the team knows. First, we have had some conversations about the use of the term non-consumptive. We all consume, or there is consumption that occurs, whether or not that's hunting, fishing, otherwise, shed antler hunting, pine cones, wild asparagus, mushrooms, you name it. So just maybe in our thinking around that, it is in the spirit of what we're trying to talk about, is that it is utilization and it's access and impact to these wildlife areas. So we all are consumptive in some way. If that's something that just nomenclature that we might flag a little bit. I will just, and maybe along with Commissioner Vardy, because this is really his backyard, super close backyard. The community of Basalt was pretty animated about this. Just given the shooting range issue a couple of years ago and the closure of the state wildlife area and just a lot of things that are happening in Basalt, it's an area that is sort of really exploding in terms of just access and interest. And there is a very, very popular trail that goes through the state wildlife area. And there was very great concern by the community and by the council and the mayor that would be closed off. I will say once there was a conversation about it, and I'm not suggesting to Travis and the Northwest team that there wasn't conversations about it, as soon as there was clarity around the impact to wildlife, the sort of animosity around that sort of faded away and melted away. And there still is great interest in making sure that as much as is on the plates of all of our field staff, that we engage with these local communities where these closures or where these limitations might occur, so that understanding happens up front. I do think, to Commissioner Adams and others, as soon as you sort of say, well, of course, if that's what we're trying to do is to protect an elk herd and migration and calving season, then we should close the trail. So it was sort of a yes, and we'd like to be part of that conversation rather than sort of a reactive, why are you doing this to us? So just, again, food for thought, reminder to Director Davis and the entire team. There's not ever too much engagement with our local communities where these properties might exist and where access was once very ubiquitous and is going to be, it will be regulated in some ways. I mean, I think anytime you quote take something away, there's reaction to that. And I think, you know, the explanation around that is really important. So, okay, if there's not any other comments or discussion on this item, just for interest of time, we do have a motion and a second on the table. I think reading the tea leaves, we can do a voice vote on this. So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you very much for that. Great work on that. So for members of the public, we're running a little behind, but we're gonna give some attention to the next item. We're on item number 11. And for those of us who hold these park seats, we've been eager to have more highlight on our state parks. We do see them and we do site visits when we are in various different areas. And just given some of the activities and things that have been on our plates the last couple of years, a little bit of a second tier, if that's maybe a way to describe our state parks. They're always there. Perhaps they're not as, quote, controversial all the time. Do want to recognize that we have, not necessarily in state parks, but we've already experienced tragic loss of life this season on some of our river corridors and in our parks. So again, thanks to those that manage those tragedies. So again, in the spirit and legacy of Commissioner Adams and others who've been really asking for the state parks overview, I think what we've at least just discussed doing, and Director Davis is supportive of this, is that wherever we are not close to a state park in this particular location, unfortunately, but whenever and wherever we are, that we make sure that we visit those state parks, and even when we're not in a place that has a state park, that we hear a park update of some sort on a really regular basis. So excited to hear from our regional teams about what's going on. This is, again, just a sort of a high-level highlight, and then when we can drill down a little bit more in our state parks, we will do that. So team, I don't know who's going to start first, but the floor is yours. All right. Come on, Mitch. Director Davis.
Yeah, thank you. So we just talked about our state wildlife areas, and I found this in my previous life in Washington State, but sometimes we can like pick out key components of what our agency's mandate is, and I just want to take the time to read it because it's so important. Again, we just talked about state wildlife areas and the role that those play in serving the public and meeting our mission. But I just want to take just a moment to read our mission because I think it's really important. And I think it's super important for our agency to keep going back to this mission and looking at the words and really reflecting on how all CPW staff fit together to make a kind of a beautiful nature puzzle, if you will, in serving the public, both the 5.8 million folks from Colorado, but also a pretty significant tourism industry that's really critically important to the economy. So just super quick, sorry team. So our mission, CPW's mission, is to perpetuate the wildlife resources of the state, to provide a quality park system, and to provide enjoyable and sustainable outdoor recreation opportunities that educate and inspire current and future generations to serve as active stewards of Colorado's natural resources. So for me, yes, this has got to be you will hear me say over and over, please help me make this a standing agenda item because our parks are beautiful. We do an amazing job, better than anyone, I would argue, perhaps in the country, of managing our park system and providing services to Coloradans and that important tourism component. So Thank you for having this on the agenda. Thank you, team, for what you're about to present to us, and I look forward to future presentations and hopefully some tours to our state park system as we move around the state with these meetings and outside of these meetings. Thank you.
Okay, to our deputy regional managers, the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Deputy Director Mock, Director Davis. I am Mitch Martin. I'm the Southeast Deputy Regional Manager, and I'm here today with the Southeast, well, my other Deputy Region Managers in the other regions. In the Southwest, Heath Kim. In the Northwest, Jacob Bray. And in the Northeast, Scott Roush. We're here today to provide an overview of our state park system. We're going to cover the history of state parks very quickly, the state park overview, impact and value of our state parks, and then also the future of our state parks. In 1937, first Parks and Recreation Board was created, and its primary duty was to oversee and coordinate the activities of the Civilian Conservation Corps. In 1955, state legislature passed state parks and recreation legislation, CRS 3310-101, legislative declaration. And it states that it is the policy of the state and the natural, it is the policy of the state that the natural, scenic, scientific, outdoor recreation areas of this state are to be protected, preserved, enhanced, and managed for the use, benefit, and enjoyment of the people. And it goes on to say that it offers the greatest possibility of variety of outdoor recreational opportunities, and there shall be a continuous operation of acquisition, development, and management of outdoor recreation lands, waters, and facilities. 1957 through 59, Governor Stephen McNichols appoints the first State Parks and Recreation Board, and Harold Lathrop becomes our first State Park Director. In addition, Governor McNichols signs a 25-year lease with the Army Corps of Engineers for Cherry Creek Recreation Area. In 1959, Cherry Creek welcomes the first official visitor on June 17th, and the first year visitation was 168,000 visitors. Also in 1959, the first boat safety program was established. In the 60s, 1960, state parks managed a total of 6 areas, and in 1962, the visitation exceeded 1 million visitors. In 1963, Game and Fish merged with state parks to become Department of Game, Fish, and Parks. User fees were established for state parks in 1965, and at the end of the decade, Colorado State Parks grows to include 20 locations. From 1970 to 79, numerous new programs are established to the system, including our State Trails Program, Campground Reservation System, Snowmobile Registration, Safety and Enforcement Program, along with the statewide boat, snowmobile, and OHV patrol teams. In 1972, Senate Bill 42 separated the Department of Game, Fish, and Parks into the Division of Wildlife and the Division of Parks and Outdoor Recreation within the Department of Natural Resources. In 1980 to 89, additional programs were established to include the natural areas and the river outfitting licensing programs. And in 1989, Colorado State Parks increases to 36 locations. And in the most recent history, 2009, Colorado State Parks celebrated its 50th anniversary at Cherry Creek State Park. 2011, Colorado State Parks merges with the Division of Wildlife once again to become Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and this commission was formed in 2012. Recent state parks named in our system: Fisher's Peak opened to the public in 2020, and in 2021, announcement of our 43rd state park was made, Sweetwater Lake.
All right, again, I'm Scott Roush, the Deputy Regional Manager for the Northeast Region. And so now we're kind of looking at where are we today? We've gone through history and where are we at today? So currently, number of parks we have are 43 state parks, with 42 of them that are open to the public right now. We also have 2 shooting recreation areas, which include Cameo and the Colorado Clays. If we look at our annual vegetation, this is fiscal year 22. So the annual vegetation that we've had was just shy of 20 million visitors. That's a lot of visitors. The one that I think stands out a lot is the overnight visitors. One people don't look at a lot. That's 730,000 overnight visitors. That's a lot of overnight visitors when we start looking at things. And that's going on parks, and that shows that we're open 24 hours a day, 365 days a week on some of those parks. So it's a lot to cover. Total acres managed was 237,000, which is a lot of acres within the parks. The revenue we're looking at is about 130 million, and then the expenditures 107 million. I'll get into those just here a little bit also. 276 full-time employees and 623 seasonal employees. And everybody within the parks just knows how important those seasonal employees are every year that we come up, because there's so much to be done. Volunteers, there's 3,196 volunteers, and that's 70% of the total CPW volunteers. That's just parks volunteers right now. So, and that's 237,000 hours, and that's 76% of the CPW volunteer hours also. That on its own, with those volunteers, that's an economic value of about $8.1 million a year. And that's an equivalent of about 114 FTE. So that's our volunteers are very important to us, and we saw that during COVID also. And all of a sudden, all of our volunteers weren't there, and we were having to do more work and having to fill in those spots where we were able to fill them with volunteers before. Looking at some of the other facilities, we have campsites, the 4,000 campsites, and that's where we get the 730,000 overnight visits. We operate cabins and yurts, 73 different ones. And marinas, we have 11 different marinas. Some of those we own and operate with concessions. Some of those we own and we operate ourselves. 30 different visitor centers and 26 different group facilities. Some of the other programs within parks was the recreation trails, the boating, river outfitting licensing, and the off-highway vehicle and snowmobile. And we'll get into those here a little bit later. So going back to the revenue, and this is the non-accountant view of what I see. And Justin, I love all your numbers, but sometimes I get confused too. So this is just kind of what we talked about, a very overview of where we're at and where our revenues are coming in from. And you can see it's the passes and license sale, the passes and licenses, and then along with the GoCo money. That's where the revenue is coming in right now. So we can go to the next one. And then our expenditures, a lot of that you see with expenditures is through the operating dollars, the personal services, and the operating, and then that equates to about 74 million, and then the capital comes in at about 33 million. So, and that's where our expenditures are right now. Me being the non-accountant, I look at 130 million revenue, 107 expenditures. That seems pretty good to me. So, but I know he dives into a lot more. So, okay, go next one. So when we look at it, it's like, what do we do at state parks? And maybe the bigger question is, what don't we do at state parks? With recreation activities and all the state parks we have, we do a lot of different things. And, obviously hiking is number one thing people like to get out and do outdoors. We've seen that in all the studies. But there's a lot of other things with camping and boating, our ranger nature programs that are at each park. We have rock climbing and geocaching, and obviously fishing and hunting. Our shooting sports with the Cameo and Colorado Clays is big. Then archery ranges at several of our parks also. Water sports and winter activities and wildlife watching are also huge. And there's others on this list that aren't on here. I mean, we have hot air balloons, we have dog off leash area, we have model airplane fields. There's other things. We just have a little bit of everything right now. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. So we Do we want all that? Do we not want all that? So we kind of have to watch that sometimes, I think. And then in order to have all those activities, we have a lot of facilities, and we do maintain a lot of facilities within our state parks. We have several different types of campgrounds that take different things, from primitive to full hookup to group campgrounds. And one thing I think a lot of people may not realize, I put dump stations on here, and that's also infrastructure. I mean, we have sewer, water, wastewater. Our property technicians have licenses to run these. We have a wastewater treatment plant, actually. So there's a lot of things that we've had to go through, and it takes a lot of upkeep on all those things. With the restrooms, we have a lot of other different ones with boat rentals and cabins, just different things, the marinas and stables, and obviously a lot of picnic sites, a lot of day use areas, and especially within the Northeast.
Again, I'm Heath Cam, Southwest Deputy Region Manager out of Durango. I'll talk about some of the impacts and values of our state parks. So right off the bat, visitation has been increasing. I think if you talk to land managers across the nation during COVID, they've seen a dramatic increase in outdoor recreation. Fiscal year 2022, we saw over 19.7 million visitors. This is almost a 30% increase since fiscal year 18. And this directly affects our park staff. Those visitors spend money to the communities around the state parks. So we estimate that there's about a $1.2 billion economic impact that those visitors are bringing to the communities around the state parks. On those smaller communities, this is a big deal. I'll talk now about some of the programs that were mentioned earlier. These programs came over from the state park side during the merger. First is the Colorado State Trails program that was started in 1971. I'm just going to touch highlights on each of these programs. You all will see the coordinators in these programs pretty often in front of you, and they can go into more details about their programs, but a few highlights. The State Trails program, one of their big tasks is their grant program for OHVs, snowmobiles, and non-motorized trails. Since 2000, they have granted out over $150 million in funding for trails. That money can go to federal partners, state agencies, local, regional, city governments, stakeholder organizations, and the general trail recreation communities. A few numbers, in 2022, we had over 214,000 OHV registrations and over 34,000 snowmobile registrations in Colorado. Boat safety program, the grant oversees the boat safety for the state, boating education, any boat accident investigations, the river outfitter licensing program, the flatwater team, which goes out and patrols waters that pretty much non-state park waters that don't get patrolled that often, and as Madam Chair met, the river ranger teams. Also the marine evidence recovery team, which has been probably a little too active, unfortunately, the past few years. He also oversees the U.S. Coast Guard grants, and here in the state, we have 85,000 registered boats. And Commissioner Adams will touch on Colorado Natural Areas Program. So there's over 95 designated sites. This program is focused on recognition and protection of areas that contain at least one unique or high-quality natural feature of statewide significance. It oversees 250 rare or threatened endangered species and communities, and it's done on public and private lands. I've been fortunate enough to work on and around several of these, the East Sand Dunes in North Park, the KT boundary at Trinidad State Park, the Pagosa Skyrocket property on near Pagosa. If you ever get a chance to visit some of these properties, there's some pretty cool things out there.
All right, so this map's just the map there was kind of an overview of just where our parks are located within the state there. We're just going to do some kind of high view on each of the regions. So the Northeast region, probably the biggest thing in the Northeast region, we see a lot of people. I mean, we see there's over 8 million visitors in the Northeast region to our parks. So we deal a lot with capacities, which you've heard about in the past, and we're continuing, you know, we have 6 day-use parks basically in the Northeast region, Roxborough, Castlewood, Spinney Mountain, El Dorado Canyon, which has the timed entry pilot program going on right now. We'll be for another year and possibly one after that. And we've seen some success there, some trials and some success. And then Lori and then Bar Lake also. And, you know, just a shout out to Bar Lake for the programs that they do there. And there are just so many, and Michelle Stewart does a great job out there. A couple of them they just had, but she just completed Indigenous People Outdoor Prairie Experience, which was partnered with Adams 12 School District. And they brought 25 kids and their adults out, and they stayed at the park overnight in teepees, and they danced, had a dance and a drum circle, and really good program. She said it was very successful. She's also had a junior ranger program out there where they had 25 kids. They actually stayed for a whole week. And they went through, they did birding, boating, and archery. I don't think it gets much better than that. So. But she said they were really engaged in that and had a great time. And then our other parks with, you know, basically the day-use parks, they don't have camping. So the other parks that have camping kind of makes them kind of that full-use type park. Cherry Creek, Chatfield, and Boyd, they're probably three of our busiest ones in the Northeast region. They deal with park capacity on a regular weekend basis and holiday. I know over Father's Day they were dealing with it at Cherry Creek, and the others were also. It's just, it gets very busy, and when the weather's nice, everybody comes out. So, and looking, you know, Chatfield, I had mentioned that we finally were able to fill Chatfield all the way up to the new reallocated water level, and was out there the other day, and it's really neat to actually see everything come together out there and have that high water level up there. So. Also, we have Boyd. We have a big project at Boyd going on right now. We currently have a $9 million campground redevelopment going up there. It was part of the governor's stimulus package. We'll be adding additional campsites, and that is actually getting ready to go out to bid here real quick. We also, at Jackson Lake, which was our first International Dark Skies Park designation, and then North Sterling, a couple on North Sterling. I think Commissioner Blecka's heard some of the weather out there, and I was talking with Park Manager Dave Piper this morning, and they did get hit with a lot of hail. They had baseball-sized hail, and they have a lot of damage, so he's dealing with that right now. And I just wanted to let you know, Commissioner Blecka, that the visitor center is still on target and should be bid soon, so they're still moving forward. So, and then the Golden Gate is another, you know, Golden Gate is different in terms of our capacity because we have county roads and going through and everything. And they're very busy with a lot of people, but it's very hard to control. And so that's kind of a different one that Park Manager Todd Farrow up there is dealing with. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention that they're known for their leaf peeping season because we hear about it every fall, and lots of people go volunteer. So. And then we have 11 Mile and Spinney, which, you know, combined for outstanding fishing. Up at St. Vrain, just off of I-25 there, they recently completed a greenway trail that connected Longmont and Firestone together. It comes through the park. And then up at Staunton, which is the home of the original track share program, which is great to see one of our newer parks within the Northeast region. It seems like it's old now, but it's still a newer park. And then obviously Colorado Clays is our shooting range. And Colorado Clays was actually affected by the recent rain too. They got flooded out with Box Elder Creek and flooded all the Sporting Clays area. So we're working on that one today too. So. But yeah, we deal with a lot of visitors, and you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about all the Northeast region staff, and that includes the park managers, the park rangers, our park resource technicians, our administrators, and our administrative assistants. They've gone through a lot the last 3 years, and they've been there for everything, and the seasonals that they hire, and all the volunteers. They've done an excellent job keeping things, you know, just clean, accessible, and safe for all the visitors that visited the Northeast region.
Moving up to the Northwest region, and I'm going to try to move us along to keep on schedule. The Northwest region is composed of 13 state parks with another in the works, as you're aware of, and one state.
Jacob, will you just Closer to
A
your.
little closer.
Yep.
We
thank
bet
you.
it. 13 state parks with another in the works, and one state recreation area. That is Cameo Shooting and Education Complex, which is really important to promote shooting sports and in a responsible and safe manner. All of our parks have unique qualities, and we could spend all day, the four of us up here, telling you about them. So just to highlight a couple real quick in the Northwest, you know, Elkhead Reservoir is a warm water fishery that fishermen love. We've got a day use park in Harvey Gap that sees a lot of fishing and a lot of paddleboard use growing there. Highline Lake is probably one of the busiest densities out on the west slope, just hugely popular, which comes with its own set of issues, as the Northeast region knows. 4 sections of Colorado River, James M. Robb Colorado River State Park, which also, you know, being spread out and managing a river corridor, or helping to manage a river corridor, is an interesting management style as well. We have a lot of scenic parks, a lot of mountain, with great camping, and I'm not going to go through all of them. We have, you know, a 72,000 acre state park and State Forest State Park, the biggest in the system. Stagecoach State Park, we manage the recreation there for the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District, and we're in the middle of, actually we're wrapping up construction of a brand new visitor center, so maybe a site to tour for the commission coming up soon. Vega's a great place to go in the heat of the summer to escape, and park manager James would probably not necessarily want me to direct all that traffic up there, but up near the Grand Mesa, it's definitely a place to get out of the Grand Valley heat. And then Yampa River, again, another river corridor, 134 miles that they help manage put-ins and takeouts and different things along there with other partners.
Okay, so for the Southeast region, as we're seeing, there's a lot of variety in our state parks. Southeast is no different. River corridor parks, reservoirs, plains parks, etc. So just real quick highlights, Arkansas Headwaters, 152-mile river trail beginning at the headwaters of Leadville all the way down to Lake Pueblo. Huge draws are rafting and whitewater adventure and fishing. Cheyenne Mountain State Park, very unique park with the partnership with the city of Colorado Springs and how we acquired that park and still manage that park. 61 campsites, 28 miles worth of trails that will get you to the top of Cheyenne Mountain as well. In addition, Scott mentioned the track chair at Cheyenne Mountain State Park with the help of the Friends of Cheyenne Mountain State Park. They are in the process of purchasing what's called a terrain hopper, and that is a similar type of vehicle to assist visitors with disabilities, and it basically has like large ATV type tires on it. It's a little bit lower to the ground, etc. So that should be operational at the end of this summer here. Fisher's Peak, 13 miles worth of trail open now to hiking and mountain biking, and we are anticipating that the trail to the top of Fisher's Peak will be completed the end of this summer, early fall at the latest, so look forward to that. We're also in the process of working on the management plan for Fisher's Peak and the next construction to take place out there. John Martin Reservoir, Eastern Plains Park, great early season fishing. Should be noted that this year the Army Corps of Engineers along with the state is going to be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the dam at John Martin, and that'll take place in October, so look forward to that. Also out at John Martin, there's various petroglyphs out there, dinosaur tracks, and even saltwater crocodile tracks on the park. So that's pretty exciting. Lake Pueblo, about 15,000 acres, 4,600 of those acres are surface water with 60 miles worth of shoreline. 2 marinas totaling 1,200 slips. It is, these guys might argue with me, but it is the busiest state park in our system per visitation, with over 4 million visitors annually here in the last couple years. Lathrop has a couple different lakes at Lathrop. One is Martin Lake, providing for power sports activities, while Horseshoe Lake provides for wakeless, non-power experience. It has camping, it has trail system, and one of the trail systems around Martin Lake is also ADA accessible with a concrete trail with a natural surface beside it. Mueller is a classic just mountain park, 5,100 acres with about 50 miles worth of trails. Has camping, 138 campsites, 3 cabins, and it is also known for its fall colors in mid to late September. And then lastly is Trinidad, about 2,800 acres, 760 acres of surface water right now. Fishing can be great for trout, walleye, and perch. And Heath mentioned it earlier, but the KT boundary can be seen at the park, and it is one of the best places in the world to view it, and it is one of the most accessible places in the world for people to see the KT boundary.
Southwest region has 7 parks, and I'll touch on them briefly. 5 of our parks are actually BUR projects that we partner with our BUR partners to manage those. Crawford, Paonia, and Schweitzer are all complexed. Crawford just had a rehabbed campground, and we're building a trail around the lake there. So those are some of the projects going on at Crawford. Schweitzer is a day use park that we had just recently purchased property for, and we are going through planning right now to turn that park from a day use park to a camping park, which would be big for that park and the local community. Ridgeway, these guys can argue about being the busiest. I'm going to argue that Ridgeway is probably the most scenic. I'll just throw that down. Ridgeway is the busiest park on the west slope and very scenic, and we've recently started a track chair program there also. Ridgeway's also in the process, getting ready to start building a new group campground. Navajo, Mancos, and Lone Mesa are also complexed, managed out of Navajo. Navajo is a 15,000 acre lake that most of it sits in New Mexico, but we are one of the primary access points for that reservoir, making it a very popular boating reservoir, and being on the southern part of Colorado, it opens up pretty quickly. Mancos, small little park just outside of Mancos, Colorado, has beautiful views of Ute Mountain and Mesa Verde. And then Lone Mesa is a limited access park where we have a very popular hunting permit program that we see there. Very isolated park north of Dolores.
Just a couple minutes left here. We'll wrap up with some of the accomplishments, challenges, some of the things that we're facing as we move forward into the future here. You know, probably the single most accomplishment is the variety of outdoor recreation opportunities we provide across our state park system. There's many different experiences, as you just heard, and kind of something for everybody, which is an appeal. We talked about Keep Colorado Wild and how that's going to change the game. For state parks history, funding has been a challenge, and you're all aware of that. And as we move forward into the future, we're going to have some other challenges, but this funding is going to help us significantly. You can talk about all the numbers, but I think the bottom line is we're on track to improve the funding for our state park system. Challenges that come with that are visitation and capacity management. You know, we're, as Heath pointed out earlier, we're continuing to grow, and our facilities, our infrastructure, our staff, they're at a max in some ways, and so we're looking at different methods and opportunities, the timed entry system at El Dorado Canyon. We're looking at different ways to help make sure that people get to enjoy those opportunities, but the opportunity isn't degraded by the amount of people, and our natural resources aren't degraded by the amount of people. So we're all monitoring and exploring and kind of learning best practices from not only our state, but others as well. Scott talked about the infrastructure we've got. You know, there's small cities that we run, and those come with the responsibilities and liabilities as well. When we're talking about, you know, serving water to hundreds of thousands of people and wastewater systems, and what happens if those things fail, and you know, there's a lot of different things that go into the management of our parks that I think hopefully most people don't see, because they come back on the back management end, but they are real players, and as our system continues to age, those are going to be things that we've got to pay attention to. Staffing is another one. It's, you know, with rising wages and budgets that, you know, have been pretty stagnant, it's hard to staff our parks. We are seeing significant difficulties in recruitment and retention of our park manager series. With a 61% turnover of our hires in the first 5 years, we're not even retaining half of them, and, you know, for a career. So it's definitely on the forefront, and our leadership team is working towards that. We manage a lot of properties for others as well. We don't own a lot of these lands. I know a lot of you are aware of that, but I think it's important to highlight that it takes relationships with other partners in order to provide these opportunities. Technological challenges, there's a lot on the horizon. I put the slide in for a strategic plan just to highlight the two main goals that apply to outdoor recreation. The different sub-metrics and sub-objectives and metrics that come along with those. I won't necessarily get into those. You know, the plan was approved by the commission in 2015, and we do these annual updates, and so I know you're all in tune to that, but they're specifically called out, these opportunities, in our strategic plan. So that's what we've got for you. That took a lot of time, sorry. We are happy to entertain any questions if you've got the time for it.
Great job, and it's a testament to our regional managers for delegation. When we sort of talked about this concept, you all really delivered. So thanks to the four of you and the folks that worked with you, and helping us highlight just such an incredible aspect of our portfolio. Director Davis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't know, I always get blown away when I learn more and more about our parks. Excuse me. And quite frankly, I think we all do, but words are important in moments, and I think we should all take great pride in one of the best park systems in the country, in my humble and maybe overly biased opinion. Thanks for putting the challenges part in the presentation. I think being the best, staying the best takes work, takes investment in some of that aging infrastructure, right? And those retention issues are real, and the leadership team is wrestling with those as we speak. I also want to say the public look at the visitation, look at the revenues, think about Keep Colorado Wild. So the public really supports our park system, and I would argue wants more. As Jacob mentioned, that can present its own challenges. But I also would be remiss of not reminding all of us that Governor Polis and his administration is strongly supportive and continues to seek to improve investments in our current park system, as well as adding new parks to that system. So thank you. Thank you all. Thank the region managers too for sending your best here to give this presentation, and I look forward to working with you all and continuing to make progress to ensure our park system is the best in the world.
Thank you, Commissioner Touchton, and then Commissioner Adams.
Well, thank you, guys. This is wonderful, and thanks to Commissioner Adams. I think you've been asking for this as long as I've been on the commission, and your tenacity and perseverance is very important. And I finally know why Lathrop State Park is named Lathrop State Park. I always wondered what the hell that meant. Thanks to Director Davis as well. You know, I've gotten a lot of comments since I've been on the commission about how our agenda, we rarely talk about state parks as much as we talk about wildlife issues. And so I like that we're seeming to shift some emphasis toward discussing state parks. One comment and then one sort of suggestion question. It was very important to me to hear you guys say that well, not every use is appropriate everywhere, and we keep that in mind with our state parks. You know, I'll use the two that I worked at when I was younger, much younger. As an example, like Chatfield and Roxborough, very close to each other, very different management scenarios, but I think equally important. You know, one is kind of a anything goes place at Chatfield where you've got everything from model airplanes to, you know, whatever. And one is more go for a hike, you know, don't bring your dog. It's more a contemplative place. And I appreciate us managing for both components of a state park system. My question / suggestion is when there was, before the second merger, when there was a Parks Commission and a Wildlife Commission, the Parks Commission used to have a role in approving state park management plans. And then with the merger, for whatever reasons, you know, I obviously wasn't around then, but the commission's role became just approving like herd management plans on the wildlife side. And we occasionally get a presentation on a state park management plan, but we don't have any role. And so I sort of look for ways to make parks truly co-equal. I sort of wonder what you guys think about whether the commission should also approve state park management plans, because they seem like the analogous role. Like if we approve our herd management plan, why not a state park management plan? So I wonder what thoughts you have on that.
Thank you for that. We've brought a few forward. I know our staff in resource stewardship that works on those plans is continuing to work on them, and there's a lot of them and they're slow. Stay tuned. You may see one coming forward in August. So they're still coming to you.
Okay, Commissioner Adams, and then Commissioner Reading.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is wonderful, awesome, incredible. And again, excited to know that this will continue on because the relationship is so vital. I do have a few questions, but I wanted to preface, you know, again, I think it's really critical in the timeline that we both uplift the things that were incredible accomplishments, but I think it's also important that we recognize some of the things that were challenges to the history of our state park system. Thank you to those who were able to join me in my keynote at the Power of We conference, Women Entrepreneurship. But one of my themes was, I don't use the term privilege, I use the term responsibilities and obligations. And this agency in our state park system has responsibilities and obligations. Specifically, you know, our first state park was established in 1937. Who was allowed to go in our state parks in 1937 when we know that Colorado was a segregated state at that time? And so again, I just want to lift up and honor that anything that happened before 1964, between 1937 and 1964, those 27 years, there were no non-white people involved in the decision-making or involved in being able to enjoy those parks, which is unfortunate because the Civil Rights Acts of 1875 actually guaranteed all citizens, regardless of race, the opportunity to be in hotels, transportation, and places of public amusement, which to me translates as a park. And so again, I think it's important that we recognize that segregated history and understand that we have obligations and responsibilities there. We also have obligations and responsibilities to the Black homesteaders that lost their homes when the Cherry Creek Dam was built in 1950 and completed in 1950. Again, our park system got to take advantage of this newly non-swamped land and created an incredible state world-class park system. But again, that is on not only the displaced land of indigenous peoples, but it's also on displaced Black communities. So again, similar to my request to have information in Staunton State Park of all people, I'm asking that we tell the whole story. On a more positive note, I agree with the comments of we can't do everything everywhere. And I just am so impressed at how you all are able to do the work you are doing with the understaffing that you have and the uncertainty around seasonal employees and all of the things. I commend you on the innovations. Again, I heard a couple of years ago at the Partners in the Outdoors conference that some of the different land management agencies were working together to help streamline seasonal employees, and so that they, you know, just again had some more guarantees around their lives, but also that our park systems and other land management agencies also had the staffing that we need. So again, thank you so much for what you do. I do have a couple of questions. One is, which parks actually make money to cover their expenses? I think that is important to say often, because I get very concerned when our Colorado legislature thinks that they want to take money from the Keep Colorado Wild Pass if it exceeds the number that we had estimated. And it's pretty clear, both from the incredible financial dashboard that Justin and his team put together, as well as this presentation, that our parks are not even close to being able to pay for themselves, and that we still have significant investments to be made. So just really wanting to know that. And then lastly, I was excited to see the SCORP plan and the opportunity to update some of those goals. Specifically, as you know, I serve on the Colorado Office of Tourism Destination Stewardship Advisory Council, not on the role for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, although I do recommend it. Where we are revisiting our stewardship and specifically reimagining outdoor recreation so that it is less impactful and extractive, and again, more in balance. So I just see a really rich opportunity there as you're making those updates. And I'm curious if you had any recommendations that you all are considering as you're in that preliminary stage of updating the SCORP plan. Thank you.
I'll attempt to answer your first question on terms of parks and that are, you know, making the revenue. It's a difficult question now because we used to track that very closely, and it's like what parks are making the revenue, what's aren't. Now that we have KCW, we have everything online, we have annual passes, we do things like that. It's very difficult to say what revenue is made at a park and what's not made at a park. So I mean, if you look back in the day, we had several parks that were very what we call self-sufficient in terms of they were making enough. Now it's really difficult to try to track something like that with the way we collect our passes and where that money is collected. So it's more looking at a overall basis and not looking at individual parks.
So I just want to chime in here. I appreciate that, and obviously we want to have a more global kind of general operating and not so site-specific. However, when we're talking to community members, it makes it difficult to bring the content that we're trying to explain back into their heart and into their community. And so that's why it was very easy to say, you know, we've got 3 or 4 state parks that are actually making revenue to meet their expenses. All of the rest, the other 90 whatever percent aren't. That's a compelling, you know, talking point when we're talking about keeping Colorado Wild Pass going, and knowing that that investment is not in and of itself going to be able to mitigate the challenges that we have in the expenses and the increased demands on our state park system.
Yeah, and I totally understand what you're saying, and I think that you have to look at some parks were put into our system that they weren't made to make money. They, like a Roxborough and doing stuff like that, you put in a Cherry Creek, a Chatfield and things like that, those were your money makers. So those were the ones that were supporting the other parks. So that of looking at individuals, you can pull numbers out, but really looking at that overall system, how we are doing as an agency, the whole system is doing and how that works. They kind of support each other with where those funds are and where they're coming from.
Okay, Commissioner Reading and then Haskett and then Blecka, and we're going to try to move on just because we've got a couple other things that we're working on. So hopefully this is a start, not a finish. Commissioner Reading.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, and most importantly, outstanding presentation, and thank you for that. It was wonderful to hear, and it makes me proud to be on this commission. I guess it's a comment more than a question, is that it seems like with the Keep Colorado Wild Pass and the budget numbers that you gave, we have resources. And my biggest concern is the staff and the retention and adequate compensation. And I'm hoping that, and I guess this is a little bit to Director Davis, that we start looking at a better compensation package for our staff. I mean, you guys are the key to making this wonderful, to making these parks successful, and I think we need to do more to support you. So I don't think it's a question, it's as much as a comment, but let's see if we can do something. Maybe it's a question for the Director Davis. Thanks.
And our legislature. Commissioner Haskett, and then Commissioner Blecka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad to see that we have field trips back on our agendas. When I first started, before we had wolves on the agenda, we used to go to parks and state wildlife areas and all that. And we do have some hidden gems. I can remember the first time I went to Golden Gate, I had no idea it was even there, and it's really close to the metro area. And it's a beautiful park. I do have a question, but I'm going to actually, because of time, Jacob, next time, would you please bring us a Sweetwater Lake update? It's been a year and a half since we started, actually a little more than that, working on this. And I do have a couple comments. I do think it needs to be the smallest footprint we have. The use there needs to be careful. But I also believe we are the best agency to run that. We can do a better job than anybody else out there, I believe, and we just need to keep pushing forward from that. But if you'd bring me an update next time, that would be great. Thank you.
Commissioner Blecka.
Thank you, and thank you for this presentation. Like Commissioner Touchton, I am seasonal alumni. I was a seasonal in 2003. At Steamboat Lake, I worked with Heath. Those were the days. And so I wanted to say there's a few comments on some things. I was priced out in 2004, right? That's why I didn't come back. I mean, Colorado was incredibly more expensive than anywhere I was living prior to that. So that was a shock. So the work is fantastic, the people are fantastic, but here we are 20 years later and it's still an issue and we're just starting to address it. So hopefully when these challenges arise, we can maybe be a little more progressive about it. Our operating costs, let me preface this also, I married into the agency by accident. And so I was around the park side for a lot, and my husband was a resource tech, and there is so much that goes into the operating costs. And like, you don't want to see the ugly side, you don't want to see the water plants, and you don't want to see the trash on a Sunday afternoon when every dumpster that you can see is filled with camping chairs and grills and all the things that people are bringing into the community. And I'm going to use State Forest as an example. You're bringing these things into these communities, and then we have to deal with it. And in Jackson County, the trash, we don't have a dump, right? Our trash then goes and gets transferred to another place 3 hours away, which is where you just came from, visitor, right? So you brought all your stuff up. Now we have to take it back to you. And so this part of it is more like a plea to our users to be a little more conservative, use a little more appreciation of what you're doing. Like, take it down a notch. You're just weekend camping a lot of times. But the costs of doing business is increased, obviously. And so we are all in this together, So we don't have to bring everything and just be really conscientious of like your trash, like seriously your trash, because these parks are operating like islands, and it's really hard to deal with stuff. And this last bit is more of like a plea and an ask, and I'm not as tenacious as Taisha or Commissioner Adams, but I also live in a place that lost a state park. It is now a state wildlife area, but I'm not talking about the process of how it went down and all that stuff, but I'm just talking about the loss of it. And I've been on the commission for 4 years, and we've opened 2 parks, not in my area. And it's also an area that doesn't have a lot of stuff or a lot of access. And to me, I see that as not so much from a recreation point, but more of an exposure to the generation of children that are living in our area. Like, I have 2 small kids that are under 10. They've never been to an interpretive program. And I taught environmental ed for 15 years. Like, I was an interbranger, and I'm gonna have to go somewhere, right? Like, hours and hours away for this. So you're losing the exposure to this agency, you're losing the education opportunity, you're losing the community support. And it's been probably 12 years since it went away, maybe 10 years, and there's no backfill and there's no plan. And so here I am asking again to whoever and it doesn't even have to be our agency, it could be a partnering agency, it could be anybody, but I'm asking you to come out and try and do some engagement with our community to help fill this void, to continue the work that our agency's been doing for years, because there's a huge gap right now. Thank you.
Okay, I think those were comments. Commissioner May promised 18 seconds, and then Commissioner Bailey.
Okay.
I can do it quickly. Jacob, to your comment about the poor retention rate we have of employees, that's a problem that's going to get exponentially worse. It's not going to get better. It's not going to solve itself. I would just ask, not as another job for somebody, but you have the attention of this commission now. Please let us know somehow what needs to be done or what we can do to solve that problem.
Close. Commissioner Bailey.
Thanks. I will definitely keep it quick and follow Commissioner Haskett's lead and just maybe request for some, as we continue talking about parks and our parks portfolio, a few updates on various things. So first, I fully second everything Commissioner Adams has said in terms of telling a richer story of the history of parks. So any places where we are doing that and rethinking and figuring out how to approach that and expand that story, I would love to hear about. Similarly, I was really struck, or maybe not similarly, I was really struck by the both number and hours of volunteers. And so I would love to hear more about the volunteer experience, how we're supporting them, how we're ensuring that we have those resources and building up again that, linking to what Commissioner Blecka was just talking about, exposure to the agency, exposure to the outdoors, exposure to education, interpretation, et cetera. And then the third thing that I'm really interested in, just because it's in my area, is an update on the timed entry program at El Dorado, and then if we're considering expanding elsewhere. So future potential agenda items.
Okay, I see Director Davis furiously making notes. So we got quite a few things that we'll ask you to come back and brief us in the future. And thanks for, again, the primer, the reminder, always keeping our state parks. I think a lot of us keep them on our minds, and I think when they're on our agenda and we have public discussion about them, it only underscores their importance to us and to the agency. So thank you to you four and to everybody that put so much into that deck. It was fantastic. It violated former Chairman Howard's 7-slide rule, but I think it was appropriate. His rule, by the way. Okay. We do have a special guest that's going to join us online. So if and when that person dials in, Katie's going to flag me. We might move things. Yes? Okay. 11:45 was the time slot. So little point of personal privilege. Looks like he's in his car. This is State Senator Dylan Roberts, who just wanted to provide a quick comment to the commission and I think to some others. So Senator Roberts, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks everybody for allowing me to zoom in here. And I am coming to you from my car. I'm on the road throughout my district, and I'm sure you all can appreciate traveling across the state a lot. But Yeah, this is, and I want to thank Chair Hauser for your invitation to just get on here really quick. And on behalf of the legislature, thank you all for the incredible work that you did on the Wolf reintroduction implementation plan and the many years of work that went into that. I know it's been a long process and one that involved a lot of tough conversations and feedback from across the state. But I think, I'm incredibly impressed with the plan that you've put forward and adopted, and honoring the voters' intent, but also taking into account the concerns that my constituents here in Northwest Colorado have and people across the state have had. So thank you for being so thoughtful and for all the work that you've done. You deserve tremendous credit for doing that. And I think have not received the credit that you deserve. So that's what I'm here to do is, as the chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee, as a member of the legislature, and just wanted to thank you for all of your work. I know we're not done. Of course, now we have to implement the plan, and I'm here to support that effort in any way that you might need from the legislative level. Make sure you have the tools and the resources that you need to do that. Just want to thank the commission, the staff, Reed and Eric, of course, for your incredible hard work and leadership during all of this. We hopefully have put in place a model for the country and will be beneficiaries of all of your great work. So that's all I have. Thank you, Chairwoman Hauser, for the opportunity to pop in here real quick. Sorry, it's a little informal on my part. I wish I could be there in person, of course, but I know we'll all cross paths soon. And please reach out at any time if I can be helpful. But thank you so much for your hard work getting this done.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. We invited Senator Roberts to join public comment tomorrow morning, and he was not available. So thank you to the commission for allowing that short audible. So Senator Roberts, we'll let you back to your travel. It looks like you are stopped, which is a good thing because we have a lot of law enforcement officers in the room that are paying attention to your stillness in your car. So thank you very much for that. We're grateful to your partnership as well and your advocacy in the legislature on behalf of the work that we were doing.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Still didn't say the word. Just for the record. Okay, we are running a little behind, but we're going to try to we've got a little bit of buffer in here. So we'll bring Raquel up for item number 12 and do this as efficiently as we can. And as Raquel is coming up, just a reminder, and I would encourage you to talk to Commissioner Adams about the Natural Areas Council. There will be a vacancy on that, obviously, and for this commission to serve in the role and the seat that Commissioner Adams has been serving in. So as we get to the officer conversations, if that's something that is of interest to you, I'm sure you can chat with Taisha at lunch or otherwise. And we'll have a good example here next on item number 12 for members of the public. So I'll turn it to you.
All right, good morning or almost afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Directors. I'm Raquel Wurtzbach. I'm the coordinator of the Colorado Natural Areas Program. So I am here today to present to you about the Natural Areas Program and then also the proposed designation of a new state natural area called Coal Creek Tallgrass Prairie, and then 2 expansions of both White Rocks and Colorado Tallgrass Prairie natural areas. So this presentation today will serve multiple purposes. So I have not given an informational presentation on the Natural Areas Program in about 4 years now, so we thought it would be a good time to familiarize many of you with that program. And then, as the chair mentioned, we are seeking a representative to fill an upcoming vacancy on our Colorado Natural Areas Council, which I will touch on. And then, of course, we have our 2 action items, the proposed designation of Coal Creek Tallgrass Prairie and expansions of both White Rocks and Colorado Tallgrass Prairie natural areas. So first, I will share with you what the Colorado Natural Areas Program is. So we are a statewide conservation program housed within Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We are nested within the Species Conservation Unit, which is then within the terrestrial section, further within the Aquatic, Terrestrial, and Natural Resources branch. Our program was created by state statute through the Colorado Natural Areas Act 46 years ago now in 1977. So the purpose of our program is to recognize and protect Colorado's significant and unique natural features through voluntary conservation agreements, which we call articles of designation, by working with landowners. We're advised by a 7-member governor-appointed council called the Colorado Natural Areas Council. And I like to say that we are a small program with a big mission. We accomplish a lot. We have one full-time permanent employee, which is myself, and then I have one seasonal, and we work closely with the Colorado Natural Heritage Program, who helps support much of our work through contracts. Okay, so I use the term natural features. You may be wondering what that means. So natural features for our program include significant or unique, could be rare plants, wildlife, insects, natural communities, fossils, and geologic features. So we work to identify and designate places that hold these significant natural features. And as many of you know, Colorado has some of the most diverse ecosystems in the entire North America, and this results in very high biodiversity within our state and a large number of species and natural communities that are unique to Colorado, that are found really nowhere else. So our program has this kind of special little niche within CPW where a lot of our work is kind of recognizing and helping designate what I like to call the little things, the species and places that also, that oftentimes go unnoticed or under-recognized, if you will. So much of our work is on rare plants. So that includes not only kind of our pretty flowering rare plants, but down to some of those non-vascular species that many of us don't think about, you know, our lichens and mosses and fungi and that kind of thing. You know, many other things that we work on, things like insects. A lot of people don't realize how many insect species we have in Colorado, which we are still learning so much about, and you know, many species probably still undiscovered. I'll highlight real quick, since we are in the San Luis Valley, we do have a portion of designated natural area in Great Sand Dunes National Park, and part of that designation is for an insect species called the Great Sand Dunes tiger beetle, which is endemic just to that area, meaning it exists nowhere else in the world. It adapted and evolved just to live in the Great Sand Dunes. So just an example of a really cool species that we help highlight and work on. And then, you know, I'll have to mention things like geologic features and fossils. Colorado's so rich in these resources, and we're still learning so much about them. Just recently, one of our volunteer stewards actually discovered a fossil of a prehistoric horse on one of our natural areas. So it's pretty cool what we're still learning about out on these sites. And then, of course, natural communities. As I mentioned, our high biodiversity in this state. We have so many natural communities encompassing so many different, you know, unique plant communities. There's several hundred that are, you know, tracked by the Natural Heritage Program that we're working on that includes different types of wetlands and other areas that are so important to the rest of our species. So our staff and volunteers work collaboratively with the landowners and managers, those that own these designated natural areas, to help monitor for these natural features. And the goal of our monitoring is to detect changes over time. And so while we are checking in on these specific natural features, we're not just monitoring for these individual features. We're really looking at it as monitoring and detecting changes over time for the system as a whole. We view these natural features as a piece of the puzzle. So as part of this whole system, what is happening to the ebb and flow of these populations? What is continuing to help these features and species to exist? So we're taking into account many factors, you know, looking at, you know, what is the soil type in this area? You know, what geologic exposures are we looking at? What is the soil health of this area? What are our pollinator interactions? How's the, you know, climatic regimes affecting these species, natural disturbances, human disturbances, and so on. All right, I wanted to quickly show you a map of our currently designated state natural areas. We currently have 95 natural areas across the state. With the addition of Coal Creek, Tallgrass Prairie, it'll make it 96, so inching closer to 100 sites, which will be exciting. And we do have many more identified sites in the works for future designation. These having a special emphasis on sites on the eastern plains and grassland ecosystems, so we can have better representation, I would say, in our natural resources portfolio, where we're missing some of that representation on the eastern plains. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you a bit about who we work with, who our partners are on these designated state natural areas. Designation can be on any land ownership type. So if you look at this pie chart to the right there, we work with federal partners, state landowners, cities, counties, private landowners, the whole gamut. So there's about a third of our sites are on Bureau of Land Management, several with the Colorado State Land Board, about a quarter of our sites, many with private landowners, and this figure includes lands also owned by the Nature Conservancy. They can be on CPW-owned lands, so many on state parks, state wildlife areas, and other special habitat areas. U.S. Forest Service, cities and counties, and the National Park Service as well. So the landowners retain all rights in management when a site is designated. The role of the Natural Areas Program is really supporting the monitoring of these sites and supporting the landowners when they agree to protect these natural features into the future for our future generations. And so there's many other benefits of designation. Of course, we're helping protect these natural features, but we're also highlighting just the excellent stewardship that these landowners have on these sites. We're assisting in monitoring efforts, and then our natural areas have really high value in both science and education. We're working a lot with other partners to continue to research these sites. As I said, there's new things being discovered all the time. Okay, I wanted to talk about our Natural Areas Council. We have a 7-member governor-appointed council that advises the Natural Areas Program. Our membership is made up of 5 governor appointees, and we have 1 representative from the State Land Board and 1 representative from the Parks and Wildlife Commission. So the purpose of the Natural Areas Council, which it does exist in statute, is to make recommendations on our natural area system, namely designations, to the Parks and Wildlife Commission, and the commission is tasked with final approval on these items. Our council helps with formulating and implementing our program strategic plan, which does crosswalk with our CPW strategic plan. And as the chair mentioned, we do have an upcoming vacancy on our council, our Parks and Wildlife Commission representative, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank Commissioner Adams, who has been serving in that role for the last 3 years. Commissioner Adams, you have helped us grow, you have stretched us, you've helped us see things from a whole new lens, you've supported us the whole way, and I just can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for us. And on behalf of the whole council, you will be missed. So thank you very much for all that you've done. And if anybody is interested in this position, please feel free to come to me or reach out later on if you have questions. You can also ask Commissioner Adams, and she'd be happy to help you out as well. Okay, I mentioned that we have a volunteer steward program. We have almost 60 volunteer stewards that help us to annually monitor our state natural areas. Our volunteer program started about just over 20 years ago, and it's really cool. Many of those volunteers are still with us. Over half of our volunteer force has served with the volunteer program for over 10 years. And the reason why this is really cool is they are the ones, the eyes on the ground, that they're assigned a state natural area. Some of them have several, and they are out every year seeing what's going on. Are there any changes? What's changing in the plant communities? What's going on? So we really highly depend on them, both as staff, because we are a small staff, so what they do really helps us out. Our partners depend on them, but it's just a really cool program because they're out there year after year, and they're really developing kind of a relationship and a connection with the land, with their sites, and with those landowners. So we appreciate all that they do for us. Right, we are the only program within Colorado state government that has a focus on rare plant conservation. Colorado actually ranks 13th in the nation for plant diversity and 8th for most plant species at risk. We have 117 plants of greatest conservation need that are listed in our state wildlife action plan, and 15 of those are federally listed species with the Endangered Species Act. So, considering our diverse geography and ecosystems in our state, that really results in a very high number of endemic plant species that live here and nowhere else in the world. So many of those are on our state wildlife action plan, and we work closely with both the Fish and Wildlife Service, we're the liaison with them on our federally listed species, and then many other rare plant conservation partners to both help recover listed species and then implement conservation actions on these species through our state wildlife action plan. And as I mentioned, we're still learning so much. A big reason why some of these are on our action plan is because we know so little about them. Many of them are very narrow endemics. They live in only these very, particular little places, certain, soil exposures, just very particular places. And a lot of the work we're doing with our partners is looking at their life history. What are we learning about them? Why might they be declining? Why are they still here? So a lot of this might be their responses to certain climatic regimes, pollinator interactions, certain disturbances that are both have positive and negative impacts on these species. It's really exciting to work on something that is often under-researched and work with our partners to learn more about them. Okay, so I wanted to quick show you, it's just a screenshot here. We do have a story map that shows all of our natural areas on our website. If you have a moment, it's pretty cool to check out. You can kind of zoom in and click on areas and learn about all of our currently 95 natural areas, including there's some tabs also that highlight a lot of our natural features that exist here and nowhere else in the world. And since we are in the San Luis Valley here, I wanted to highlight one of 5 natural areas we have here. We were really hoping to do a field trip with you all out to Zapata Falls for this meeting. Unfortunately, we decided against that. So you actually have to hike not just across a creek, but up a freezing cold creek. And considering recent water levels, we decided there were some safety concerns. We won't make you guys do that. But if you haven't visited, it's a really outstanding place to visit sometime. So this natural area is located near Great Sand Dunes National Park. It's owned by the Colorado State Land Board and managed by CPW through the State Land Board's Public Access Program. We designated it in 2002, and the main reason for designation is for a species called the black swift. This is a very rare and interesting bird that nests primarily behind waterfalls. So it is in steep decline. It is listed as a Tier 2 species on our state wildlife action plan, and then it's of significant conservation concern both statewide and globally. Colorado is a very important place to this species because it has the highest number of known nesting sites anywhere across its range. And CPW has been supporting research for this species for many years. Zapata Falls is, I think, maybe the longest research site for this species. It's been a banding station that Bird Conservancy of the Rockies and other partners has worked on with support from CPW since 2006. So I was just talking with our bird coordinator last week, and she told me that they actually last year recaptured a black swift there that had first been captured 17 years ago. So it's pretty cool how long this species lives. Other things we've learned about 10 years ago, researchers there put these little geolocator backpacks on birds to figure out where they were going in the winter. We weren't sure exactly where they were going, and we figured out they were going to these lowlands areas of Brazil. And then other recent research on the movement ecology of these birds, we found out that they actually spend their entire non-breeding season as aerial roosters. They fly around the whole time and do not roost, which is just amazing. So CPW continues to support that work. They'll be supporting Bird Conservancy of the Rockies on a statewide population assessment for the next couple years. Okay, so transitioning over now to our action items on our new designation and expansion. First, I did want to give you some background information on how, what are our designation steps, kind of where we've been, how we got to this point. So in summary, our first step is identification of a site, and then registration, which is really just an administrative step where the landowner and our Natural Areas Council agrees that this site meets our qualifications according to statute, that it's a high priority site, and then next designation. So our current step today is getting final approval from you all on this new designation and these expansions. A little more work to do after that, all the appropriate signatures on the articles of designation, which is that agreement. Those articles of designation are in your mailing packet if anyone has specific questions about those. Ultimately, a certificate of designation is signed by the governor, and then our program will work with the landowner, which in this case, all three sites are owned and managed by the city of Boulder. So we will work with them in monitoring of the site, and the owner agrees to protect the natural features in perpetuity, and they retain full management responsibility. So I think it's important for me to hit on the longstanding partnership that we've had with the city of Boulder. So we've worked with the city of Boulder, open space and mountain parks for over 45 years. One of our first designations was on White Rocks Natural Area, which the city owns. We have 4 current state natural areas with the city of Boulder. And this new designation and these expansions, they've been working on with the program for 13 years now. So they've been very patient with us, and we are very excited to have this finally coming to fruition. As I mentioned, those articles of designation, which are in your packet, serve as the voluntary conservation agreement, and all management is retained by the city of Boulder. Okay, so here is a map, and this shows all of our currently designated natural areas with the city of Boulder. And then down to the south here in the purple is our new proposed site, Colorado Tallgrass Prairie. So it's in the purple there, and it is actually located in Jefferson County, although it is owned by the city of Boulder. It contains 1,458 acres owned and managed by City of Boulder Open Space and Mountain Parks. It was purchased by the City of Boulder in 1999. It contains a high-quality example of xeric tallgrass prairie. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. And the designation would highlight further protection of remnant tallgrass prairie communities and its dependent species in Colorado. So a little more on these significant features. So as I mentioned, the main reason is this tallgrass prairie that exists there. It's a xeric tallgrass prairie community, meaning it's a drier site. This plant community is considered imperiled both globally and within the state. And this site in particular is very unique because it has this unique blend of prairie and montane species. It's right in this transition zone along the foothills, kind of on that south edge of Boulder there. So we have both wildlife and plant species that exist on this tallgrass prairie that you also see in the montane ecosystem. So it's pretty interesting. And then the reason why we're really interested in protecting these tallgrass prairie sites, this is a little tallgrass prairie patch remnant, and these are important, what we call relict ecosystems. So a little background, when the ice age ended about 10,000 years ago, there was tallgrass prairie all over. It was lush, it was wetter. As time went on, it got hotter, it got drier, and much of this was replaced by a lot of our grass communities that were more evolved to drought. So our short grass prairie, those types. But there's still these little pockets that remain of these relict tallgrass prairies, mostly along our Front Range, which, as we know, is highly developed, which makes it that much more important to help to protect these little remnant patches. So we have several other associated wildlife species and pollinator species that exist on this site. There's a pond there. We have breeding northern leopard frogs, which are also a species of greatest conservation need, a whole slew of grassland nesting birds, and then several rare butterfly species as well, including the regal fritillary, which is petitioned for federal listing, and several pollinators listed in our state wildlife action plan. All right, next. Trying to get through this quick. I know it's about lunchtime. So next, I am going to talk about White Rocks Natural Area, here to the north, in the green. So you'll see there's a little solid block, so that is the portion that is already designated, and then the green hatching is what we are proposing to be designated. So this site was designated in 1979 and contains 105 acres. It was originally designated with a private landowner named Martha or Ricky Weiser. Anyone from the Boulder area might know. She's kind of a local famous name in that area, kind of one of the first environmental advocates that really pushed for a lot of open space protections in Boulder County. And this was her land. So that land was later transferred to the city of Boulder, and the city bought the surrounding properties in 2015. It was designated for a very unique and outstanding geologic feature called White Rocks. It's an outcropping of Fox Hills sandstone from the Cretaceous period, and it's called the turtlebacks, as you can see in this photo. It has the shape of that. So it contains several state rare plant species. There's been all kinds of work here. There's actually a book that came out that's on just the lichen species of the White Rocks Formation. There was 2 newly discovered lichen species found here within the last 10 years. Of course, several other wildlife species associated with this area, including grassland birds, aquatic species that are species of greatest conservation need, northern leopard frog, plains top minnow. There's riparian habitat here, which is why I was mentioning the aquatic species. So several values and benefits to this proposed expansion will be going from 105 acres to 1,477 acres. So that additional acreage will include the entire geologic formation, and then of course much more habitat for those associated flora and fauna species. Last but not least here, I will cover Colorado Tallgrass Prairie Natural Area. So that's in the middle, in the blue. You can see the solid blue chunks. The original designation, they're these little disjunct parcels. So we are looking to expand that and include all of the tallgrass prairie within those sites. This site was originally designated in 1984, 269 acres, containing both xeric and mesic, kind of drier and wetter tallgrass prairie systems. Again, many plant and wildlife species. This one does have the federally threatened Ute lady's tresses, which is a plant species, and then also the federally threatened Preble's meadow jumping mouse exists on this property as well, and many of those grassland birds and pollinator species as well. So this proposed addition would increase it to 1,347 acres, including additional habitat and for these associated flora and fauna. And this one would also increase the connectivity to several other natural areas owned by the city of Boulder in that same area, and would allow the city of Boulder and natural areas to continue to better help protect and conserve these tallgrass prairie communities along the Front Range. And with that, we would like to ask or request that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, 1, approve the designation of Coal Creek Tallgrass Prairie Natural Area and accept the articles of designation, and 2, approve the expansions of the White Rocks and Colorado Tallgrass Prairie Natural Areas and accept the amended and restated articles of designation. And I can take any questions if there are any.
Thank you for that thorough presentation. Questions, comments, Commissioner Touchton?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Raquel. That was a wonderful presentation. Again, Commissioner Adams has been your cheerleader. Her enthusiasm for this program is contagious. Well, the other thing I wanted to thank you for was looking at the Eastern Plains. I know the resources are there. It's an underappreciated ecosystem, but like I know on our preserve, I think I have the biggest population of Colorado green gentian, and a scientist discovered a new species of lichen. So I know that stuff is out there. Dallas could say the same thing but so that we're there, we just need to get recognized, I guess. The question I had was on White Rocks. On the map in our packet, there's a purple area inside the expansion, and I didn't know what that purple area was, because some of the purple area is then left outside of the expansion. I was just trying to figure out if, like, what the factual situation is of why that's purple.
But I believe that map was on a like topo, like a USGS topo background, and that might have been historical kind of gravel mining sites that have been restored by the city of Boulder.
Okay.
That might be what those are.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Adams.
Thank you so much. It really has been an honor to serve. I am really excited about this new property and these new opportunities. You know, the city of Boulder, our population is currently in decline, but it has been increasing over the last 10 years, and so we need more natural areas, not just for the the bird and the insects and the tall grass prairie, but quite frankly, we just need space that is not overrun by humans and our infrastructure. So I'm really excited about that. I love this program because I think it's what I like to refer to now as the Sculpin effect, or the Sculpin factor. So I went on a tour of the Windy Gap in Granby, where we're doing a lot of restoration work on that dam. What is it called up there? Somebody help me, please.
Windy Gap.
Yeah, just the Windy Gap construction project. Anyway, my larger point is when the health of that project and the success of that project, one component is the health of the sculpin. Will the sculpin return to the bottom of, behind Windy Gap? And similar, that's how I feel about this program, right? Like, when I first came on, I was like, what is crowdgrass prairie? Why is this important? You know me well enough to know I ask questions. And I kept serving and I kept learning and appreciating this is the sculpin of our organization. And the success of this program is a huge indicator for the success of this agency. One, I wanted to lift up the staffing. And again, it is great that we are borrowing staff from another organization. However, that's not a long-term strategy for something that is critical. We don't borrow staffing for finance or any other of our critical areas, and we can't borrow staffing from here. Also, I want to lift up the landowner relationship. In the 4 years and 3 months that I've been serving here, I am constantly reminded, and I agree with the incredible role that landowners play who are landowners of ranches, right? When we talk about landowners here, it's primarily ranchers because of the incredible relationship that we have with them. But there are other landowners that are a part of this agency and a part of our work who may not be in ranching, but are going to be critical to the work that we're doing. So, and the relationships that you and your team have with those folks are also really critical. And then lastly, the volunteer base. The volunteers not only doing that work, but to me, those volunteers should be lifted up and heard as meaningfully as we listen to hunters and anglers, because these volunteers go back to the same place year after year. They're seeing the same changes that hunters and anglers are seeing when they return time and time again and really studying what's going on there. So I'm hopeful that we can tap into our volunteer base from our Natural Areas program when we are having conversations about herd management plans and other components, because they are a part of this. They are seeing things that we can't see, that we don't have the capacity to see because of the acreage that we have. So again, just really excited about this program, excited for the next commissioner that has the honor to be in this program as it continues to grow and get some significant love from our new director, who I believe understands the sculpin factor, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so happy he's leading our ship now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Reading.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for that presentation. What a wonderful program. I think we need more staff and more attention to the vast diversity of life that's out there in our great state. 1.5 person, people, hour, time, whatever, is simply not enough for the vast complexity of life. And it just awes me when I go out and see the diversity we have in the state, 980 species of bees, for example, just astounding. I was really pushing the button to make a motion to approve both of your proposals, and so that's the motion I'd like to make now.
There's a motion on the table. Commissioner Adams, second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Sorry, further discussion? No. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Great. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so I'm going to get a quick straw poll around what happens next. We have some very important curated field trips this afternoon, so I want to just check with folks on some options. We can power through and not have a journey back to the hotel for pickup. We can move officer and committee vacancy discussions to 8 a.m., which means we start a half an hour early tomorrow morning. So just want to get a sense, little straw poll of what would be preferred. I'm just asking what would people prefer. So I'm gonna say, would you prefer to move officer discussion to tomorrow morning and start at 8 a.m.? I don't care. Are you supportive of that? Sure. Gesture. Okay. Then we're going to do that in order to stay on time and do the awards and presentations and get to lunch. And we'll have Corey, why don't you talk about our logistics for this afternoon, and then we'll do awards and presentations, and then we'll tell you where lunch is for those who are attending lunch. Does that sound all right? So for the record, and if we need to do anything, Laura, and to our IT team, we will begin tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and not 8:30, and we will move item number 13 to 8 o'clock right after roll call. Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Corey Chick, Southwest Region Manager. No awards and presentations at this meeting. We'll have some in Gunnison, just to be clear about that.
Oh, it's on our.
It was.
We can do it. Oh, we're not doing that.
Nope.
Okay, that might have modified our suggestion, but we'll go ahead and do that just for in the interest of time.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you had heard me earlier. You do? Yeah. I didn't know that.
We do have an award, I think. So. Okay, so Corey, why don't you tell us about the logistics this afternoon, and then we're gonna do awards and presentations. Go ahead.
Sorry. So lunch in room 309. If we can leave the hotel by 1:30, that gives us plenty of time. We'll probably leave the rehab facility around 4:15. Get back to the native fish hatchery by 5. We'll have a short tour there and then have the community dinner. So if anyone needs directions, just let me know. If you're not taking one of the vans and need directions, just let me know. But other than that, if we can leave promptly at 1:30 at the hotel, we'll have plenty of time.
Okay, so just for clarification, clothes, shoes, all that stuff, you get one stop at the hotel, and we're going straight from bears to fish.
Correct.
This afternoon. So, and if you have drinks you're bringing for tonight or anything else, bring it with you at 1:30 and be in the lobby of the hotel. Ready to go 1:30, please. Okay, so we're going to do awards next. And just because of the sort of transition. So again, lunch for those who are attending lunch is upstairs in room 309. So follow Laura and the crowd that will go there. And just please get yourself back to the hotel at, say, 1:15 or so, ready to go by 1:30. Okay? So, Frank, turning it over to you two for awards. Okay. It's all yours.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Director, and Commissioners. My name is Grant Brown. I'm the Boating Safety and Registrations Program Manager for CPW and also serve as the Boating Law Administrator for Colorado. I'm pleased to be here today to present the award for the Colorado Boating Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. This is an annual award presented in part with the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators and CPW to an officer who has gone above and beyond to ensure the safety of Colorado's boating public through enforcement and education.
Madam Chair, Director, Commissioners, my name is Frank McGee, Southeast Region Manager. It's my privilege to announce that this year's Boating Officer of the Year is Tappan Brown. And I would ask that Tappan come forward, and we've got a couple other staff members from the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area. If they can join us as well, Tom and Jeff. So real quickly, I'd like to go ahead and read part of the nomination from the staff there at Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area. Staff strongly recommends Tappan Brown for the Boating Officer of the Year. Tappan contributed much to the boating community during his time at Arkansas Headwaters, and especially so in the last year. And if you don't know, he's recently taken a new position as one of our trails coordinators. His accomplishments include the completion of a multi-city life jacket loaner program, countless on-water saves, thorough and compassionate death investigations, strong partnerships throughout the river corridor, and providing education and swiftwater rescue instruction to the agency and its partners. Tappan acquired funding through the U.S. Coast Guard Boat Safety Grant to build racks with easy-to-follow signage for instructing users how to properly fit their PFDs. Additional PFDs were donated by cities, nonprofits, and river outfitters to help sustain the program, all of which were made possible by Tappan's strong relationships with local partners. As the primary officer responding to and investigating boating accidents on the Arkansas River, Tappan's presence brought calm to these often chaotic scenes as he worked tirelessly to bring closure to loved ones. Tappan and the team he led worked proactively to prevent accidents by positioning themselves at major rapids to provide immediate rescue when needed. Tappan is a dedicated teacher of swiftwater safety and rescue. He taught swiftwater rescue courses to CPW's new officers, creating the next generation of boating officers. And he also welcomed students from partner agencies, including fire departments, search and rescue, counties, and federal agencies. He's led many community outreach programs, and the staff there believes that he embodies a well-rounded boating officer whose contributions to the boating community will have a positive impact for years to come. Thank you, Tappan.